Good evening, everybody. I am Gina Brown. I would love to welcome all of you, to our viewers at home, as well as to everyone in attendance to the 2015 Provincial Leaders Debate. Tonight, we are coming from the Smallwood Arts and Culture Centre. We are being seen live across the province, and we are also proud to say that our Eastlink viewers will be able to see tonight's debate at a future time. Tonight's event is possible because of a partnership with the Gander and Area Chamber of Commerce and Rogers TV, and it's our hope that by the end of this evening, you'll have a clearer idea of what party you feel best represents your point of view, especially when it comes to provincial matters, and especially since you're going to have to make a political choice of your own come November the 30th on Election Day. I'd now like to introduce the chair of the Gander and Area Chamber of Commerce, Fallon White.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, leaders, panelists, and viewers. My name is Fallon White, Chair of the Gander and Area Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber, I welcome you to the 2015 Provincial Leaders Debate. It is indeed a pleasure to partner with Rogers TV in hosting this debate. This is a new venture for the Chamber as we offer viewers a leaders debate and a program that is being aired live across the island thanks to Rogers TV and Eastlink. Tonight, my role is timekeeper, and as we all know, keeping politicians on time is always a challenge, and tonight will be no different. However, I am very pleased to have none other than Gander's own Mr. Pete Soucy as our moderator, and no doubt between the two of us, we will be able to keep you guys on track. Best wishes to all three leaders as they debate many important issues throughout the province, and more especially rural areas. I now welcome our moderator, Mr. Pete Soucy.
Thank you, Fallon. Well, to our live audience here at the Arts and Culture Centre, and those of you watching at home on Rogers TV. Also, I'm told that it is live streaming on rogerstv.com, so lots of ways to be with us tonight. It's terrific to be here. I'm, of course, a Gander native, and I should start off by saying slew to one and all here. That's the right way to do it. We are here with three tall leaders and me. Anyone tuning in right now is a new program called 3.5 Men. It could be worse. I could be Scott Sims, which might be called 3 Men and a Decimal Point. It's going to be a great night. We have lots of different setups for the leaders to contend with, and we have very strict time limits for them to use. I'm going to be asking, therefore, that they use as little filler as possible. I have reviewed the previous debates, and let me tell you, there are some times when it does sound a little bit like the term papers I handed in university. We are trying to keep to specific points, and I'm going to actually ask maybe people down front here if they might keep an ear open for some specific terminology that I've heard many, many times. Who wants to count the time somebody says indicate? Would you keep tabs on that, sir, and maybe try to keep an idea of who says that the most times? Someone else perhaps can listen for the word opportunity. Also, the term diversification, that'll come up. And building on will be another one that I'll be listening for myself. The debate will take place in 3 parts. The first will feature questions from our panelists over here. And our panelists are Gina Brown from Rogers TV, Kevin Higgins from the Gander Beacon, and Mr. David Newell from CBC Gander. The second part will feature, after a break, we will have questions from the audience. Most of these will be from audience members right here. Some of the questions will come from emails or tweets, questions that come to us over social media. I'm going to be asking you to keep your applause to a minimum, no extended applause breaks, no loud demonstrations of support, and of course I don't think we have any signage here anyway, so that's fine. Also, I would like to explain the lights over here. We couldn't find any smaller ones. We have 3 colored lights here. The green will be on when their time begins to answer a question. The white indicates that they have about 20 seconds left, and the red comes on when their time is up, and we will be closing down their response very shortly thereafter. So I think that's about it. I think we're ready to go here. I'm going to step behind the desk, and I will be interjecting if and when need be. give this microphone to Fallon. We'll be having a chat during our break coming up after Part A. And we will begin tonight with a question from Kevin Higgins to Mr. Ball, and the order in which they answer will vary as we go through these questions. Remember, gentlemen, you have 1 minute each to answer or address these questions, and then 2 minutes for open debate. Mr. Higgins.
Mr. Ball, a large portion of the province's revenue is slotted towards economic development in the St. John's area. Specifically, what will your party do to ensure economic growth to rural areas?
Thank you, Kevin. One of the things that's important when you look at economic development around the province is making sure that we leverage on the great natural resources that we have available to us. So when you look at, in particular, the rural areas of the province, it's important that we extract and make sure that we leverage and maximize the benefits that we get from what has been our traditional industries, things like our fishery, mining as an example, tourism, agriculture, aquaculture around the province. So leveraging, making sure that we maximize on all those benefits, creating jobs and wealth in rural Newfoundland and Labrador is a policy and a platform that you will see us develop as the Liberal Party of Newfoundland and Labrador. I spent over 30 years in a small business in a small area in our province, so I know the value of 5, 10, 15, and 20 jobs. I know what that can mean to a small community. In some cases, it can be the foundation of that community. So economic development, in particular in rural communities, leveraging the benefits of what's been traditional industries in our province, and knowing that oil and gas will always be a foundation, and that people then will have that opportunity, even if it comes to traveling, but making sure that the infrastructure is in place, making sure that we maximize on the benefits of the great assets that we have from our natural resources.
Mr. Davis.
Investment in rural Newfoundland and Labrador, I think, is critical. I think it's critical for the continued growth and prosperity of our province, and I think our track record speaks volumes for it. And if you just use a couple of examples, dynamic air shelters, great success story for Newfoundland and Labrador, great success story for the Burin Peninsula. Our investments in tourism, so using our resources are broad-ranging, and tourism is a resource. Our people are a resource. Our province is a resource. And making investments in tourism have been significant for us and have been significant for people of the province and people who are building a tourism business here. And also, as far as resource development goes, in our fishery. And looking at ways to expand the fishery, find new ways forward with our fishery. Aquaculture is a great example. And what's happened on the south coast of our province has transformed the communities, has transformed opportunity, and it's also transformed employment opportunities, and people are coming back to the south coast. And we just last week announced a memorandum of understanding, an agreement with Grieg out of Norway, who's going to bring one of the biggest aquaculture industries or opportunities to Newfoundland and Labrador, biggest we've ever seen in Canada.
Mr. McCurdy.
Thank you. The rural Newfoundland and Labrador is an integral part of the very fabric of our province. So providing opportunities for economic development in rural communities is critical. I've spent most of my working life working in and on behalf of the people of rural Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm used to the challenge we saw in the moratorium when things were pretty grim around here, when the place was in a pretty demoralized state, that we worked to create jobs in small communities, to share the wealth, to make the best of the two main assets we have, our strong natural resources and the ingenuity of our people. And I think that's the recipe again going forward from here.
Okay, gentlemen, we are going to begin a 2-minute period now within which you can exchange ideas on this particular question.
Yeah, I will start, Pete, because the Premier started by mentioning dynamic air shelters on the Burin Peninsula. Well, that is not an initiative of this administration. That's an initiative that was put in place in the 90s by a former administration. That was the vision and the foresight that other administrations had seen. So the success on the Burin Peninsula with dynamic air shelters in particular did not start with this administration. A prime example of this is we've seen a forestry asset in central Newfoundland now, about 180 cubic meters of wood available as a forestry asset in the central portion of Newfoundland and Labrador. And what's been happening now is that we have not seen this administration even come close to developing that asset in this particular, which could mean meaningful jobs in many of the rural areas.
Mr. Davis, would you like to respond to that, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. Dynamic air shelters has grown into a great success story. It didn't happen by accident. It didn't happen overnight. It's a long-term plan in which a local business in rural Newfoundland and Labrador has continued to grow and thrive. And that growth, that's thriving, to creating jobs and help drive the economy, producing items that are used for multiple and a variety of services around the world. And that was grown in partnership in many ways with our current government, with our administration. And growth doesn't happen by accident. It takes a lot of work to grow and take industries that grow. We know that the Liberal Party is opposed to aquaculture, and it's transformed the south coast of Newfoundland and Labrador. And the opportunities that exist with
that is not true, Premier Davis. That is not true about the Liberal Party being opposed to aquaculture, and you know the difference.
Mr. McCurdy might want to get in on that particular point.
On that particular point, I think, yes, the aquaculture, no question, has created economic activity. I think it's important going forward to make sure that that activity is measured against the impact on our traditional wild fishery, because the two don't operate in isolation of one another, and I think we need to take close stock of what the impact has been to date of aquaculture, and before we get into huge expansion, say what are the impacts and how can we go forward to make sure the two industries can live coexist and provide the basis for a sound economy in rural parts of the province.
Okay, I appreciate your brevity on that. Now, of course, I've messed things up already, folks, because I inadvertently looked past their opening statement. So I'm going to interrupt this whole session here now by going back, pretending that we're starting afresh, and give each of the leaders their 2 minutes for opening statements, starting now. Mr. Ball. My apologies.
Well, thank you, and certainly I want to welcome our audience here in the Arts and Culture Centre tonight, as well as our viewers across Newfoundland and Labrador. I'd also like to thank the Gander and Area Chamber of Commerce for organizing tonight's debate. It's my pleasure to be here. Tonight, you will have the opportunity to hear more about the Liberal plan for a stronger tomorrow, as we debate the topics that you have identified. And over the course of the election campaign, we will proudly stack the Liberal platform against any other parties, knowing that our plan will lead to a stronger tomorrow. Our 5-point plan will focus on restoring openness, transparency, and accountability, building a stronger, smarter economy, improving health and health care, supporting safe and sustainable communities, and investing in our future through education. The people of our province are looking to our Liberal team for hope and for change. With 40 candidates, we are giving people in every district the opportunity to vote Liberal on November the 30th. We are joined by thousands of people across the province who have the courage and the will to deliver that message for a hope and for a stronger tomorrow. A stronger tomorrow means health care that's outcome-focused, education and early learning that will set our kids up for success, economic growth and diversification, renewed traditional industries and emerging new ones, supporting seniors so that they can stay in their own homes longer and in their communities longer, promoting thriving communities and better infrastructure. It won't be easy. It will take hard work. But that doesn't mean that we cannot do better. I've never backed down from anything because it wasn't easy, and neither has our Liberal team. And amongst all the uncertainty out there, one thing is for certain. We can't keep doing the same things and expect different outcomes. So I thank you for this opportunity to be here, and I look forward to your questions and this debate. Thank you.
Sir, Mr. Davis, your 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Pete, and thank you to Rogers and the Chamber, organizers, anybody who's had input and assistance in organizing this event, and to all of those who have come out tonight to participate and to listen in. I'm very proud and pleased to be here in Gander to talk about issues that are important to all of us as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. My approach is grounded on leadership and grounded on hope. And hope means health. It's about mental health. It's about physical health. It's also about healthier lifestyles for our population. Hope means opportunity. It means small business, innovation, rural enterprise, and all the things that create jobs in our province. Hope also means people, childcare, education, skilled training, affordable housing, long-term care. It means poverty reduction, violence prevention, and it means child protection. And hope also means economy, protecting the fiscal health of our province without deep cuts to services or, for like many of you here, those who deliver those services. So hope is about health. It's about opportunity. It's about people, and it's about our economy. And I believe that every investment that we make in Newfoundland and Labrador, and particularly rural Newfoundland and Labrador, is an investment in our future. We've already been planning strategically. We are going to deliver 360 new long-term care beds, many of them right here in Gander. We're going to give our small businesses the lowest tax rates in Canada. We're going to further collaborate with Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador on a new tourism strategy that sets the boldest growth targets this province has ever set out to achieve. We're ready to stand up for search and rescue investments that are long overdue and the strong role that our military bases play in our province. And because of our country doesn't start in Halifax, it starts right here. And it's time for a comprehensive strategy for our marine safety. It's time for true leadership that's not vague or evasive, but forthright and clear. It's telling it like it is and then getting the work done. That's the leader that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians need, and that's the leader that I promise to be. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys are good, right on time. Let's go with Mr. McCurdy.
Thanks, Pete, and thanks for the opportunity for a little warm-up before the opening statements.
My pleasure.
And thanks to the town of Gander and to the Chamber for organizing this event and providing the opportunity. We have to approach the challenges that face us in the coming years with optimism. We're not going to shrink our way out of financial challenges. The times are tough, but compared to what we went through in the 1990s, I'm confident that we can find a way through it. And that's based on a confidence that in our people and in our natural resources. And we need to build on those strengths. Our history in dealing with social and economic challenges has too much been in addressing the symptoms rather than getting at the root causes. I don't think anyone in public life in this province should be satisfied with the current level of poverty, with the current level of domestic violence in our society. There's always room to improve. We believe that an election campaign should be about values. It should be about ideas, what people stand for. Anyone at any given time can list off a number of promises of things they'll do. After the fact, some of those get done, some don't get done. But if you know what values somebody is basing their platform on, then I think it gives you a good idea of what to expect. The NDP has a vision for a society centered on fairness of opportunity, the lessening of inequality, sustainable use of our natural resources, respect for the environment, treating our seniors with dignity, and a determination to provide opportunities for young people to put down roots and raise a family in rural and urban parts of our province. For a long time now, for 66 years since Confederation, we've been playing a kind of slow-motion game of ping-pong between electing Liberals and Conservatives, and Liberals for a while, and then Conservatives for a while. I think it's time to kick the habit. I think it's time to try something different. The New Democratic Party offers that something different, and I welcome the opportunity to debate it here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. McCurdy, and thank all the leaders. I think a round of applause is perhaps in order there. Gentlemen. Fresh off a debate just last night at the LSP Hall in St. John's on the status of women's issues. And now, with the opening statements out of the way, we'll go on to question number 2. This one will be asked by Mr. David Newell, first to Mr. Paul Davis.
Mr. Davis, healthcare is the largest government expenditure in Newfoundland and Labrador. In order to relieve pressure and avoid cuts, does your party support privatizing aspects of our healthcare services? Why or why not?
Yeah, thank you. And good question. I know it's a question that's on many people's minds, and it's an important one. There is aspects of healthcare that are currently privatized, and I believe there's an opportunity to partner with private business in the delivery of certain healthcare services, for example, long-term care. We are in a fiscal crisis today, and we face significant financial challenges as a result of the drop in oil prices. We also have a challenge in healthcare, one where people lie in stretchers in emergency rooms when there's not a bed available to them. And we have circumstances where people show up for a procedure or a surgery and are told you can't have your surgery or procedure today because there's not a bed available to you. And we also know that a high percentage, 15 to 20%, sometimes more, of our acute care beds are occupied by long-term care patients who need a long-term care facility or bed to go in. We know every other province in Canada utilizes this model that we propose and that we're working towards. Liberal governments, NDP governments, they use them right across Canada. We're the only province in Canada who doesn't utilize this model. And in the case that we have in St. John's or Chancellor Park, we have people who actually ask if when their loved one has to go to long-term care, can they go to Chancellor Park? It's a model that's worked elsewhere. It's a model we're striving to work towards because we believe that that's going to alleviate much of the pressures in healthcare. Acute care services need to be maintained as they are today, but we have to find better ways to provide better health care. We need to put more resources towards frontline services and less to management and middle management and those types of services. It's the frontline service that is important to the people of the province.
Mr. McCurdy.
I fundamentally disagree on the privatization of healthcare services. I believe the provision of healthcare fundamentally should be a public service operated on a universal, accessible, and affordable basis to our people. I think what's shown in other jurisdictions, according to reports from Auditor General in various jurisdictions, notably Ontario and BC, is that in fact the P3 infrastructure proposals have cost more and that the services at the end of the day have been not as good. Because the cost is always ours. The fact we say get some scheme to have somebody else actually do the construction and incur the capital cost of the construction, we still end up paying, and the difference being that if it's financed by the government with this financial might just by its very size, the interest rate is more attractive than what the private sector at best can obtain. So I believe that the right way to go is to develop this as a public, both the health care and long-term care, as public services delivered to the public of the province.
Mr. Ball.
Thank you, Pete. First of all, no, I do not support privatization of health care in Newfoundland and Labrador. And added to what the Premier just mentioned there, he talked about that this could be done cheaper, yet his own the Deputy Premier, the current Minister, has said that there's information that they are confident that this would save Newfoundlanders and Labradorians money, but yet they have not showed that information. They keep that information to themselves and fail to share that with people in Newfoundland and Labrador. For us as Liberals, what we've looked at is we know the certain physical landscape that we have in our province right now, so we've looked at other options. Number one, the delivery of healthcare services within the walls of the infrastructure would be delivered by our own front-line healthcare workers, Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, that are currently delivering that right now. But we will look at an option like performance-based infrastructure. Then we would take that information, look at the value for money, share that information with Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Then the decision could be made on where the best value for that investment is.
Well, to start this 2 minutes of debate here, it seems like Mr. Davis is on one side, Mr. McCurdy firmly on the other. You're somewhere in the middle. We're not sure exactly what all that entails until we research it and find it out. But it can't be all things. Clearly, there's lots of feedback on this. There's lots of statistics and research. Where is it? Is it a good idea? Is it not? Mr. Davis, you want to start?
And as I said, every other province in Canada utilizes this.
But not always with great results.
And some of them haven't. Some of them have struggled through and how they manage it, how to get it off the ground. We're partnering with Partnership BC, a Liberal Crown corporation out of British Columbia, in order to deliver this. But if you listen, just for a second, if I may, Dwight, personal care homes, pharmacists, family doctors, dentists, physiotherapy is all privately operated health care throughout our province. Your family doctor, quite likely, could be a private business that delivers health care services to you that's paid for by the province. That's the type of model that we're talking about.
Okay, Mr. Ball,
simply because it's happening in other provinces, as you say, doesn't necessarily mean that it's right. So are you suggesting that a company would come in from outside of Newfoundland and Labrador, bring in their own workers, because it's the same nurses, it's the same LPNs, it's the same healthcare workers that we have available to us in this province that would go to work in those long-term care sites that he's talking about. And if you are so sure that this can work, why will you not share that information with Newfoundlanders and Labradorians? If you say the evidence is there, if you say you've done the research, well then share the evidence.
Where is that information, Mr. Davis?
We're going through a competitive process. It's wrong. It's just wrong for government to say, we think this is how much it should cost, as we're asking people we're inviting tenders to say, come in and bid on a process, enter into a competitive process. When we've undergone our competitive process, and we will do as Mr. Ball refers to all the time, value for money, we are doing our assessment, we will complete our assessment, and we'll ensure that it does give us best value. I can assure you, Pete, if this doesn't provide the best option for us for long-term care, we're not going to do it. It's as simple as that. We won't do it. If it turns out at the end of the day that our prices are through the roof and it's nowhere near the experience that other governments, Liberal governments and NDP governments have had in Canada, if it's not where Partnership BC, a Liberal Crown corporation, has said we should be, it won't happen. Okay, but this is about providing good quality services to the people who need them the most.
You say it's more money for less service or poorer service. What do you know and what can you share with us?
This is what the Auditor General has said in Ontario. This is what the Auditor General has said in British Columbia. But when people, and Premier Davis talks about Chancellor Park, but what we're likely to get from privatizing those long-term care facilities is not a bunch of Chancellor Parks. We're likely to get a big multinational US-based company like Extendicare, which has over 100 long-term care facilities in this country, and they run those facilities centrally in the same way that a box store or a chain restaurant runs their menu from far away. This is not local business. What we're likely to see here is those kinds of big companies. And again, where does the money, first of all, where does the money come from to put profit in the pocket of the operator? Number two, where does the money come from to pay the higher interest rates that come with their investment, and which just add 2 points. Compare your current mortgage to a mortgage rate 2 percentage points higher, and you see a huge difference in what it's going to cost you.
I'm sure I'd like to end this segment, since we're past time, with what likely is going to be a yes from each one of you. We are never going to see the day in this province where it's one bath a week, pay extra for the second one, right?
Right.
What the Premier said, that the cost, the location, and the level of care would be determined by the private operator.
Mr. McCurdy?
Well, I hope we don't end up with where people are asked, do you want to supersize your SpaghettiOs for an extra $1.50 in our long-term care?
Fair enough. We do have to move along.
If I may really quickly, one of the concerns I've heard, and I've talked to NAPE about this, and I've told NAPE that when this model gets set up and established, I invite them to come in and organize their members. I will hold the door open for them, and I will support them in the organization of employees in these centres, these long-term care centres. That'll be in Corner Brook, it'll be in Grand Falls, Windsor, here in Gander and St. John's, and I would fully support that.
Okay, we'll move along. Let's go to question number 3. Gina Brown will pose a question for Mr. McCurdy.
Mr. McCurdy, the children of our province are the future leaders. Currently, the curriculum in high schools is lacking a focus that would adequately prepare our youth for leadership, specifically in the business world. What changes would your party make to ensure that our youth are better prepared to become future business leaders as they graduate from high school?
Well, I guess first of all, first step I would have in addressing curriculum would be to bring in experts, like the Newfoundland Labrador Teachers Association, for example, who deal with that day in, day out. I think the whole area, I think there's clearly room for fundamental change in the whole area of mathematics. That was a subject I happened to take in my day. It was my main subject in university. And I think we've gone astray, quite frankly, on that. I think there's a business, fundamentally the school system is about preparing people for the world, whether it's the world of business or the world of skilled trades or the world of working in natural resource sectors, all those sectors. So, I don't think it's a school as a training sector, but I think there's more can be done to prepare people for the kinds of challenges that they'll meet when they go out into the workaday world.
Mr. Ball?
Yeah, well, 3 things that we've already outlined. One is a Premier's task force on educational outcomes, because we've already identified that the curriculum right now is certainly not preparing our K-12 system for post-secondary education. Secondly, it was to do away with the no-zero policy that we have in our schools right now. I don't believe personally that this is, and teachers are telling me this, and these are the people that we've consulted on this. So we will do away with the no-zero policy in our school system right now. And thirdly, what's important, which goes back to the question, is about co-op education. In 2001, we had over 1,300 students in Newfoundland and Labrador that were involved in co-op education in our province. Last year, that number was 0. So we need to get back, and this is a commitment that we make, is to get back into co-op education within our high schools, do the Premier's task force on educational outcomes, do away with the no-zero policy, get co-op education back in our schools.
And Mr. Davis.
Thanks, Pete. Education has to be an ongoing evolution. And I remember not that many years ago, back in the early 2000s, when the topic of discussion wasn't about a curriculum, it wasn't about performance, it was based on where's my child going to go to school, because how many times do you hear about schools who had leaky roofs and had mold in them and those types of things? Well, we've overcome that. We don't hear that today. We do have challenges with space, but we're building schools today that have the best ability to learn in them like they've never had before. New schools that are opening in different parts of the province. where there's one computer for every 2 students. That's amazing. If you thought 10 years ago that we'd ever get to a level like that in our education system, a lot of people would say, oh, that's never going to happen in Newfoundland and Labrador. But we also have to evolve our academics. There's no 2 ways about it. I've seen examples where the delivery of programs right in schools has adapted to certain cultural values right here in our province. And it worked very well and improved outcomes and improved student performance. We've got to look for better curriculums. And we need to look elsewhere. We need to look at those who deliver services. I was a frontline worker most of my life, and I fully believe in consulting with frontline workers and how we get better value.
Okay. Essentially, the question is dealing with preparing our youth for an entrepreneurial track. So what we really want, there are models, Junior Achievement and others have worked on this for a long, long time. What more can we do that perhaps isn't reliant? Obviously, facilities and equipment and all that technology is very important, but what changes do we need to make in our curriculum that will directly lead to more successful entrepreneurship? Mr. Ball.
Yeah, well, co-op education is what I mentioned, because what we do know is that when we have students in our K-12 system that are exposed to a co-op program, it makes their career, they are more successful in their career choice. There's lots of statistics out there to prove what I'm saying is right. When you go back just about, as I said, about 13, 14 years ago, when we had over 1,300 students, and even when you factor in the declining student enrollment when we have our province, there is a marked difference in how our students prepare themselves for their profession, for their career, once they go through a co-op education program. So what I want to see, what we will do as Liberals, is make sure that we put back in our high school system a co-op education program.
And outside of the immediate curriculum and what's delivered in schools is also attracting our young people to look for a higher level of education through Memorial University and post-secondary. We've maintained tuition freezes for undergraduate students in Newfoundland and Labrador to the point that today we have the lowest tuition cost in the country, and we are the first province in Canada, the very first province in Canada, to move from a loan system to a grant system for our students. Post-secondary education is more accessible to our students than it ever was before, and one of the desires of that is to attract more students to seek out a post-secondary education and make it available to them.
And on that point, I congratulate the government for that position on keeping the undergrad fees low and the move towards grants. I believe in going to significantly increase graduate student tuition fees. I think that's a mistake. I think those are the very people we need to be the foundation of our future economy, because really ingenuity is a lot of what it's all about. Really what business is to a large extent is about ingenuity and tapping taking advantage of the resourcefulness of our people. And I believe having graduate program that's affordable. I went, as members of our caucus, the only ones who went to the town hall at the campus this year on the issue of international and graduate student fees. And I heard one after another of these international and graduate students come to the mic and say that if with the increase that was being talked about, they would have to return home. It's a big net. It's an advantage for us, a competitive advantage, and we should keep it.
Okay. Well, certainly ingenuity is a big part of it, but perhaps we need another question at some point about initiative and even greater access. I think we'd all be on the same page when we say we need to make it as accessible as possible. Let's move along to our next question, though. We have Kevin Higgins with a question for Mr. Davis. Oh, sorry. It's Gina Brown to Dwight Ball. You had 2 in a row. My mistake.
That's okay. Mr. Ball, the Gander International Airport is currently under review due to operational costs associated with maintaining the building. If elected, would your government invest in the construction of a new terminal building for the Gander International Airport?
Well, thank you, Jean. I've met with the local management at the Gander International Airport, and I'm very familiar with the situation that they're currently trying to address there. And there's a number of different factors that are being that we have to consider there. One is the role of the federal government, and I'm very pleased that we've seen a federal Liberal government under Justin Trudeau's leadership that is prepared to make infrastructure investments in our province, $125 billion over the next 10 years. Over the next 10 years. So what we're talking about here is a classic example of where that partnership could occur. We know the value. There's an heritage value too with the airport here in Gander. And these were the messages that came to me from the management team there and from indeed the community in general. So making investments into infrastructure like the Gander Airport is something that, yes, for sure, a new Liberal government would consider.
Mr. Davis.
Certainly, thanks, Pete. We've partnered with the Airport Authority, and I really see the airport in Gander as a regional service and a regional economic driver, and it creates regional opportunities as well. And we've already partnered with them in upgrades, $3.5 million by our government, partnered with $3.5 million leverage from the federal government for upgrades. Also, we know now that while one time it was always concerned, is the airport going to continue to last? We see increased flights and usage by Air Canada and WestJet and PAL as well here through the air access strategy as well. And we also know the terminal is a size that is a handful. There's no two ways about it, and that operation. And the way I like to operate on this, if the Airport Authority comes forward and they present that business case, I think the future is bright for the airport. They bring that business case to us. We want to partner with them and partner with other funding opportunities such as the federal government for a new terminal for Gander. There's no two ways about it. It's important to Gander. It's been the lifeblood of Gander since the very beginning, and it should continue.
It's some sexy in there, I tell you that.
Pardon me?
Some sexy in that old part of the airport. Mr. McCurdy?
Yeah, and the problem is clear. That's a huge airport designed for another era when planes couldn't make it across the Atlantic without stopping off, and we had a huge natural advantage here. I guess it really ultimately will come down to what are the operational costs of trying to maintain and do something with that huge space, which I can only assume, particularly in the winter months, got to be problematic, versus the the capital costs associated with building a replacement, and then there's also the issue of the building, which is kind of a unique. I don't know unique, but certainly a very representative of the type of construction of the day. So I think again that's something that would have to work with the town of Gander, the the Airport Authority, and the federal government to look at and have to be weighed in the context of capital expenses all across the province and I guess the priorities established.
It's airport, not an outport, Gander. You got to keep that in mind. Okay, well, I guess we have time for an exchange here on, this is a very big issue, of course, for this particular community and for the entire area. A lot of people don't want to lose the very rare architectural styling that people around the world say is the best, almost, example that you can find anywhere. There's that, and then there's the new airport.
Well, you mentioned it's sexy. It's probably 1950s sexy, is why some people
still sexy.
But it still is. But it has
it's
to be
as sexy as Fidel Castro tobogganing down the hill across by the lake.
But it really has to focus on functionality, efficiency, effectiveness. How can it be created so that it supports the local economy? Can it provide business opportunity for local business here in the Gander area? How can it expand and grow services so that it creates those larger economic drivers and creates more jobs and more benefits? Instead of spending boatloads of money on the cost of operating a building that's probably only about a third of it that's really being utilized, then it should be driven towards building that economic driver within the Gander region. And I think that would be a better use of the money.
You know, when I did the tour and met with the managers at the airport, number one is when you look at any region, you look around and you look at the assets that are available for economic development. So when you think of Gander, I mean, like most people in Newfoundland and Labrador, they certainly think about the Gander Airport. And when you look at and when you speak to the town council and area residents, they understand there are two things, two options that are available here. One is the asset itself and how we move people around and just to meet the traveling demand. But also to that is the history of what this airport brings, just not only to Gander, but to our province. So when you make a decision on where those economic investments are made, how we develop the economy in a certain area, all those factors have to be considered into that final decision.
Mr. McCurdy?
Well, I guess, yeah, the follow up on your point a minute ago, I think Gander could be called the airport for the outports because it does draw, and most of its clientele do in fact come from small communities. And but I think it'd have to be really what use can be made of the building? I think it would be very desirable to salvage it. We'd have to have a plan to use it, which would have to be worked out with both the town, I would assume, and the business community in Gander and surrounding regions. So it's productively used. And then so Gander remains the hub for the region.
Nobody wants to say we've got too many big ticket items already and we're not going to be looking at a Gander airport? No? Okay.
Well, Pete, one of the things that happens in our province is really interesting because we've got some visionaries, some strong visionaries in Newfoundland and Labrador who take ideas and concepts and they grow them into reality. And that reality drives the economy, it provides jobs, and it provides a quality of life for people in rural parts of our province, and even in hub centres such as Gander. So saying that anything is too big and too beyond, I've learned before, never say something's too big. Dream big, and then figure out a way how you can make that a reality.
Okay, you still got to be able to fly there.
Absolutely.
Let's go to Mr. Higgins now with his question for Mr. Davis.
Mr. Davis, for a number of years, government has been increasing funding to the RNC and in turn increasing the number of RNC graduates. On the island portion of the province, all areas outside of the northeast Avalon, west to Cornerbrook are protected by the RCMP. Given this vast area, what will your government do to ensure rural Newfoundland has adequate police protection services from the RCMP?
Yeah, a good question, and there has been significant investments in policing, not just with the RNC, but also with the RCMP as well. They're structured different, the relationship is different with the province, but in both cases, efforts been made to improve on policing services and to, while they find and operate, because they operate themselves in many ways. The RCMP and the RNC, we're not directly involved in how they operate and how they do their jobs, but we provide the funding so that they can do that. And they've both grown. And one of the things that the RNC saw, which was a little bit different from what the RCMP was, is they had, back in the 90s, there was a stop in hiring of police officers. And through that full decade, there was very few hires. So what you had was an aging police service that was working their way through their career with nothing coming behind them. And then we reached a point in the early mid-2000s when, look, they're going to start to leave. And our government started to try and backfill. Started to create jobs and employment, started to hire. We did diversification of hiring. We went and targeted women to bring up the number of women in police services and had an exemption on our Human Rights Code to do so and did specific targeting to recruit more women. So policing is important to the province. And they've grown their services, they've grown how they operate. There's a joint effort between the RCMP and RNC throughout our province that we've never seen before. While they have their individual policing jurisdictions, we know they partner together, and that creates best value and a safer community.
I appreciate it's difficult to keep these answers within they're such complex questions. Mr. McCurdy?
Well, I guess the RCMP, it would be something we'd have to, and the Minister of Justice presumably would be the one who would lead the way in that, to meet with the two forces. Obviously, we need. And unfortunately, we're seeing, the need for police services continues, as always, with us. The RCMP, I haven't heard any push to get a change in the current arrangement of jurisdiction where the RNC services what they now service and RCMP services the rest. But we'd obviously want to work with both of those forces to provide the best protection we can for the people.
Mr. Ball.
Yeah, first of all, I guess the question about RCMP and coverage is really about how we deliver police services across the province. When you think about delivery of services, you also got to ask, why are we asking for more police protection? So we got to also deal with the root causes. It's just simply not about hiring more police officers or just having the skill mix to be changed. We need to get back and start preventing some of the root causes. And what I'm talking about here, of course, is mental health. What I'm talking about is addiction. We need counselors in our school. The police services are way more complex than they were in the past. I've also seen, and I've met with many communities over the last 3.5 years, and this issue has been raised with me many times. In particular, just a few weeks ago in Grand Falls, Windsor, as an example, when we were getting reduced services, and when we get a police officer that's off for some reason or on a restricted work duties, we do not get replacement for that individual. So it's a big discussion that needs to be had, but we must address the root causes of what's causing the demand on police services.
But I wouldn't call mental health a cause of crime. I mean, oftentimes people with mental illness are the victims of crime, and but I, you know, from the point of view of getting to root cause, I think fundamentally getting to I think get a roof over people's head is absolutely fundamental to cracking some of the social difficulties in our province. If someone doesn't have a stable roof over their head, how are they going to deal with an addiction? How are they going to deal with getting ahead, finding a job, and so on? If they don't have a place to go home in the end of the day. And the places, the cities that have done it, Medicine Hat, Alberta is a classic example. They've said, we're going to put housing first. We'll guarantee people a roof over their head. And what they found was that the cost of doing that was less than the cost to the city and to the province of dealing with the consequences of an individual being homeless, through incarceration costs, through housing costs, through social services costs, through acute care hospital costs.
Somehow we've gone from a policing thing to a providing homes for people, and I know that there's a connection there. It's not
people at
entirely
home,
false
they're less likely to be bothering the police.
But can we actually afford the policing that we need today? Apparently, they say violent crime has certainly not gone up, but there seems to be an ongoing need for more officers than we currently have.
I stand to be corrected, Pete, but I think in the last decade we've pretty much doubled spending on policing in the province. Now that's on human resources, it's on technology, because you look inside of a police car today, they've got all these
expensive videos.
Very expensive, yeah, very expensive devices that improves their ability to do work. Policing services have added such services as domestic violence coordinators. RCMP have them, as the RNC have them as well. They work together on cybercrime, which is a huge issue in our society today, and it has no boundaries. Cybercrime can affect everywhere, and there are teams of investigators now working on cybercrime. There's community-based policing, which has been a core and a value for many, many years that continues to happen. And when we have such a large geography as we have, it is challenging for police services to be in every community at any given time and to make regular visits to those communities. But we still have to do that, and we still have to work with them to provide them with the resources so they can provide good policing, not just adequate, but good quality policing presence.
Mr. Ball, did you want a final word, even though we're a little over time?
Yeah, Pete, what I want to address here is one thing, if we rely strictly on the statistics about reported crime, you know, what people are telling me, there is so much crime that's happening in communities that are just not reported because you do not have the necessary coverage in many of our communities right now. So many people in lots of communities have reached out to me and said, we have crime happening in our community. It's just not being reported because they know that there is no one there to actually deal with it or respond to it.
Okay, sir. We will move along. In the interest of getting through all of our questions, Mr. Newell has a question for Earle McCurdy.
McCurdy, predictable and stable infrastructure funding is essential for proper municipal governance. What do you feel works well with the current legislation, and what is your party proposing to enhance the deficiencies in this area?
Well, I guess first of all, I hope we appear now to have a federal government that's at least interested in engaging in with premiers, with the provinces in the whole area of infrastructure. Because what we have is we have a lot of infrastructure now that really is in need of upgrading. A lot of it was done. The heyday of a lot of it was the 60s and the 70s, and we need to get at it. The time for government really to step in that area is really, it should be when the private sector economy is down, a counter-cyclical invention. In other words, if the economy is booming, the private sector economy, we don't need government as well pumping money in, but when the private sector starts to wind down, that's the time that the public sector has a role to boost it. And infrastructure spending is certainly a very good way of doing it.
Mr. Ball.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. First of all, I'm glad Mr. McCurdy is talking about the great work that the federal Liberals are planning on doing with the infrastructure plan, the $125 billion over the next decade, I believe. It's refreshing to see that we now have a federal government and 7 Liberal MPs in our province, and we look forward to working with those MPs. But added to that is what we're proposing as a policy right now is for multi-year tendering, so that when you look at the priorities that you want to address within the province, you look at it and you would put out multi-year tendering, so that you're not getting companies that are waiting until August and September, and in some cases October, before work begins in our province. So getting those tenders out there faster, putting them over multi-years, I believe it will give us better value for our money. And we're very pleased to see that we have a federal Liberal government willing to participate with those partnerships.
Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Pete. In 2003, when our party took over government, our infrastructure was broken. It was battered and bruised, and it was in deplorable condition in so many ways. Since then, we've invested hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on roads, on bridges, on schools, in healthcare facilities, on necessary buildings for government services, on ferries, as an example. But we know we're still not there, and we still have roads that need improvement. They're still years behind where they should have been in having upgrades done to them. This year alone, we're spending over $300 million on infrastructure. That includes roads and schools and so on, and ferries and so on. And it still seems to be not enough. But yet we're making progress and we're working toward it. But it's important to point out, it's very important to point out, that having solid infrastructure, and Mr. McCurdy kind of alluded to this a minute ago when we were talking about housing, because for communities, if they don't have that solid infrastructure in place, it makes it really difficult for communities to grow and thrive and attract people to come to them, to attract business and attract new residents. And having that infrastructure, good quality infrastructure, solid infrastructure in communities is important to them.
Who wants to jump in?
Well, I think one thing I'd like to see, I think is needed, is a real review of the Public Tendering Act and, in fact, how bidding is done under that. With respect to some sectors of our economy, I'm not convinced that it's highly competitive, and I'm not convinced that the level of returns that come out of it are comparable, on my understanding, are higher than in most jurisdictions. And, of course, the public treasury pays for that. So I think we need a whole look at that and how it's at the Public Tendering Act and how it's being applied across the province.
Well, I will jump in here, Pete, and the Premier mentioned about ferries in the province. When you spend tax dollars, when you spend the money of hard-working Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, you want to make sure that you spend that money wisely. When you're paying $25 million in tariffs that were unnecessary, when we add other options for those ferries, that is money that could have been spent. If you spend the money on tariffs, well, then you cannot spend that money on bridges. You cannot spend that money on roads. You cannot put that money into affordable housing projects. So this is just one example of making sure we make better decisions and we plan better with our tax dollars.
Mr. Davis, you want to respond to the tariff issue?
Absolutely, absolutely. With the tariff added, we still have by far our best value. This is a great contractor and a great partner. They're world-class shipbuilders. The new vessel that's going to provide services to change oil and Fogo Oil and Run in the very near future is tied up down in St. John's Harbour. I've had a chance to view it. This is far beyond anything we could have ever imagined available. The quality is going to provide a quality of service. It's going to provide a reliable service.
The quality of service, you lost an engine before it got to Newfoundland and Labrador.
And if I may, Mr. Ball. And if I may, Mr. Ball, I didn't interrupt you, and I'm sure the people here in the audience want to listen to my answer. But the company, now that he brought it up, the company, we hadn't accepted that vessel. And that company, instead of repairing the engine, fixed it. They fixed the engine. They replaced the engine. They completely replaced it before it was delivered. And if it was not in perfectly good running order and a new vessel, then we won't take it. Their vessel replacement strategy was the Nonia. It was an embarrassment to our province. We're building high-quality vessels for the people of rural Newfoundland and Labrador.
And what did you buy back a few years ago and just released it again, still under lease?
What did we buy back?
Yeah, the vessel that you used on Bell Island that you bought back. You took it back, and they spent money on it. Then you signed a long-term lease. Where is that vessel today?
We didn't buy it back. You should get your facts right.
You leased it back. I said leased it back.
Because of our need for providing services to the people of the province, we look for short-time fixes.
You had $25 billion in oil royalties and from the Atlantic Accord, and you talk about a past administration. And there you are with $25 million, and you talk about the great work that was done, and yet you couldn't even get the ferry over to Newfoundland and Labrador without the engine gone.
I want to give Mr. McCurdy an opportunity to just chime in before we move along. Go ahead.
I'll go back there.
I'll come back.
Time marches on. I guess it doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence when the engine goes like that, and I hope that was a temporary blip that's now going to be fixed, and the thing will work well for the benefit of the people of Fogo and St. John's because they need and deserve it.
Mr. Davis, 10 seconds if you could.
High-quality vessel, and sometimes you have these issues that happen. The company stepped up right away at no cost to us as a customer and to taxpayers of the province. replaced it at great cost themselves, completely replaced that. That's a first-class company, and they provided a first-class vessel.
One small question, if I could, before we move along. Was the tariff looked at and considered to be an acceptable cost if it had to be paid, or was there an assumption made that it wouldn't have to be paid at all?
Well, we had fully expected and hoped that we wouldn't have to pay it. It was a consideration during the process, but we'll see where Mr. Trudeau is, because he says he's going to have a look at it. We'll wait. We won't hold it to him. We'll wait and see.
Okay. Let's move along. Mr. Newell has a question now for Mr. Ball.
Mr. Ball, our senior population is the fastest growing demographic, and this is especially true for rural areas where seniors make up the higher percentage of the population when compared to the province's urban areas. What is your party's plan to address the increasing needs of seniors in rural Newfoundland and Labrador?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, you're right. With the demographics in Newfoundland and Labrador, we've just seen really a complete reverse of where we once were. We now have 90,000 seniors in our province and just over 60,000 students in our schools, where just a few years ago that was a complete reverse. So we've seen the changing demographics. And as Liberals, we want to respond to this. One of the things that we know is that seniors want to stay in their own homes and in their own communities as long as they can. So we've taken a policy, we've announced it already, for seniors that are 70 years of age and older. And we will do the healthy living assessment, so we can determine, the living environment that those seniors are living in right now, and we will work with those to keep them in their own homes as long as possible. Second to that, we know that we've announced the Office of a Seniors Advocate as an example. We've just seen, the Davis government trying to recover money from our retirees of almost $1 million, and this is a primary role right here that a seniors advocate could play. Also, we've made a commitment to reversing the HST, which I'm sure will help many of our seniors because they live on low and fixed incomes right now.
Mr. Davis.
Yeah, thank you. Fastest aging population in Canada. We have that. We will be the oldest population in Canada in another short few years, and we've taken great strides in providing better value, a better quality of life for seniors. Everything from expanding our community support services and home care programs to our seniors. We've now expanded to allow for the utilization of family members and providing home care support for seniors. I've already talked about our plan to develop more long-term care. I haven't heard a plan from either one of the other parties on how we're going to do that and how we're going to eliminate those challenges and those stresses on our staff and our hard-working employees in emergency rooms and surgery wards, as an example. We've got a 65-plus Newfoundland and Labrador prescription drug plan that 41,000 people avail of annually, that we invest $45 million. That's providing better value to our seniors, but we know our population continues to age and we have more work to do.
Okay, and finally, Mr. McCurdy.
Yeah, I think that the key to this, because it's both a case of being desirable for people to live in their own home and also in their own community and to be part of the life of the community in their later years. In order to do that, we have to have a plan, a comprehensive plan, looking well ahead into the future for home care. To do that, we have to have the occupational standards in place, the training in place, a recruitment plan in place, and we also have to have a level of remuneration, wages and benefits that makes it an attractive proposition, because we're going to be short on working age population before too many years. Seniors, taking care of seniors presents a real opportunity for stable jobs in rural Newfoundland and Labrador. But if you look at the current workforce in home care, what you have for the most part is people with only a few years left in their working lives. Pretty soon they themselves will be requiring care instead of providing care. We have very few young home care workers, and I think we need to start forthwith on getting a plan in place to say, let's establish this as a profession that will draw people, that people say, I want to stay in my home community, I want to get proper training to become a home care attendant, and I want to do that because there's a decent income to be had from it, and I see it as a way for me to stay in my hometown.
Gentlemen, is this the biggest challenge to an incoming government now to deal with this? Because this demographic issue is going to be around for quite a while, and it's substantial.
It's one of them.
Practically every decision has to be looked at through that lens of how do we how does this, what effect does this have on seniors, whatever policy matter you're looking at, and how do we conduct ourselves in a way, in a recognition that we're a rapidly aging population?
Mr. Ball, where is it in your list?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big issue that we see in Newfoundland and Labrador. We know we're leading the way. Just by months, though, when you look at the demographics, when you compare us to Atlantic Canada, one of the things that we need to make sure, too, is that we now know that we do have a partner with the federal government. And when you look at Atlantic Canada in general, we have the oldest population in the country. So we are actually kind of leading the wave in this one, not probably the wave we want to lead in this particular case, but we know that in Newfoundland and Labrador we are two-thirds above higher than the national rate for seniors that are living in poverty. Right now in the Northern Peninsula we have 40% of our seniors living in poverty. So we had to put in place a senior strategy which will include home support, which will include keeping healthy living assessments so people can stay in their own homes longer. We know that's the most cost-efficient way to deliver that service, and making sure that we have affordable housing projects that are in place so people can have a roof over their heads and a safe place to sleep.
Mr. Davis, what more needs to be done?
One of the aspects, Pete, if I may, on our aging population is also the pressure that it puts on families. And elder care is probably one of the fastest increasing pressures on working families today. Looking after their parents while quite often both are working themselves and have to care for their aging parents and aging family members. We've partnered with 45 communities throughout Newfoundland and Labrador to assess their age friendliness and how they can provide better services and opportunities for the seniors that are living in their own communities. We've provided grants to 95 organizations this year who provide age-friendly programs and services right in our communities. So it could be a Thursday afternoon social gathering or a Tuesday morning for a dart game, or it could be a game of cards on a Saturday night. Those are types of activities and investments that go a long way in providing value and a higher quality of life. But as I said earlier, our population is still aging. It is going to continue to do so, and we've got to deal with this. It's coming to us very quickly.
Okay, we do need to move along. We have two questions left in this section of our debate. We're going to move along to question number 8. Gina Brown for Mr. Davis.
Mr. Davis, a majority of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians understand the need for large investments in infrastructure, as well as in projects that may result in significant economic windfalls. However, in addition to this, residents want the provincial government to make prudent budgetary choices. How important is a balanced budget to your party? And if it is important to you, are you planning to raise taxes or cut funding in order to keep the budget balanced?
Well, when we faced a significant financial challenge last year, when the global price of oil took a dive, and it's still down. The forecasters, worldwide forecasters, never got it right, and to this day they're still not getting it right. And we had to face that head on. So when you're looking at your fiscal circumstances, you really have 3 very high-level choices to make. Do you increase your revenue by taxation? Do you decrease your spending by reducing services and programs? And an easy one that quite often that governments will start at is employment, paychecks, because about 70% of government cost is in paychecks. And the third one is to increase the deficit. And what we've done is we've taken a multi-year approach. We've taken a 5-year approach to bring us back to balanced budgets, knowing that we do have to run a higher deficit, that we will run a higher deficit than what anybody would ever like to do. But so far it's worked. Our economy is still booming. Our economy is still trucking along. Our unemployment rates are stable, and Mr. Ball will have to tell you our unemployment rates have dived. From September 2014, September 2015, 0.9% is how much our unemployment rate moved. And considering that the doom and gloom, that picture that some people present, I think that's very good. We still have the second highest salaries in the country. We have the lowest poverty rate. In 2003, we had the worst poverty rate in Canada, and today we had the lowest level of poverty anywhere in this country.
Okay, we are into the open debate part of this question. Mr. McCurdy, do you want to start off here?
Well, first of all, any effort to balance the budget in the immediate term, I believe, would have very drastic negative consequences on the province and the economy. It would compound the problem. a shovel is a poor tool for getting out of a hole, and that would be what that would amount to, because we'd be digging that hole deeper if we had tried to balance the budget. It would mean massive layoffs, which would affect small businesses, would lose the customers, would have less money to spend, and so on. And we'd be in a downward spiral. It's interesting with the current administration that when taxes came down, that the reductions were applied in a manner, particularly the 2010 reductions, that 90% or so of the benefit went to the top 10% of income earners. But when it came time to raise money from taxation, it was done through the HST, and the Minister of Finance got up in the House and said, that's the fairest way because everybody shares the burden. Well, if that's the fairest way to increase taxes, why would it not have been the fairest way to reduce taxes instead of saying that the bulk of the benefit went to the top income tax bracket?
Okay, and now actually we're into the open part of the debate. My mistake, hard to keep it all straight. So who wants to respond?
Yeah, I'll step in. I want to remind the Premier that he mentioned about the reducing oil prices just last year. Well, this government actually financed or budgeted a deficit before oil prices went down. And I would challenge Mr. Davis, when you look at the economic indicators that we have in our province, all of them are going in the wrong direction. Housing starts, when you look at the unemployment rate in our province right now, 13.6%, which is the highest in the country. So what you see here is when you see the economic indicators trending in the wrong direction, that doesn't speak well for your economy. That is the reason why we've made a policy commitment to reduce or to reverse his decision to increase the HST from 13 to 15%, because taking money out of the pockets of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians will actually shrink the economy, will hurt the economy, not help it grow at all. We see housing starts in our province right now at 2001 levels. This is the first year that we will be below 2,000 new housing starts in our province in well over 10 years, I would say. So these are the indicators, and when you make decisions, based on what government's role would be in this situation, I agree, you have to make investment in infrastructure. That is the reason why we've made a decision to invest in major projects like the Waterford Hospital. It has an economic benefit, and it also addresses one of the healthcare priorities, the largest healthcare priority that we have in our province.
Mr. Davis, aren't we overdue for a report on our current fiscal session? Shouldn't we know where we are relative to where we thought we should be?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're overdue, but typically in the fall there is an update done. But I want to touch on HST, Pete, if I may, because one of the aspects of our HST plan, to go back to what Mr. McCurdy's talked about, because there's an HST rebate that many families avail of and receive in the fall of the year. And currently, so if there's two partners and a child under the age of 19 in a home right now, they would receive $140 in a rebate. Under our HST plan, that same 2 adult, 1 child house would receive $420 in a rebate. And not only that, but we're expanding the thresholds of who would be available for it. So we're essentially doubling the number of families that would be eligible for that rebate, and we're going to put $420 in the pockets of families going into Christmas season is how this is going to operate, going into the fall of the year. But if you look at all the economic indicators that Mr. Ball likes to talk about, there's still 700 new vehicles sold a week in our province. 700 new vehicles each week. We've got the second highest average weekly earnings, second only to Alberta. Our per capita household income is third in the country. We have highest retail sales we've ever experienced before. None of that sounds like a province that's broken, even though Mr. Ball, Mr. Ball, I'd like to interrupt, just give me a minute. Even though they claim that we're in this huge, terrible recessionary period, yes, we do have commodity prices we're facing that's causing difficulties. We do have oil prices that are causing us difficulty, but our economy is still working, and business confidence is increasing. Recent studies will show you. CFIB, I believe it was, most recently said business confidence in Newfoundland and Labrador is increasing. So we've got to continue to keep the economy going, is where we are, and that's driving the economy throughout not only urban but rural parts of our country.
I want to ask Mr. McCurdy, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with the HST rebate situation or plan, and why is our economy not functioning just fine right now?
I guess on the issue of new cars, that's good for the people who are able to afford new cars. We have a lot of people in our province who can't afford to even keep an old car on the road. On the issue of the second highest incomes, That's good. I think a lot of that stems from oil industry jobs, a good many of which are migrating back to Alberta, and in fact the Alberta economy, where so many of our people have gone to work and brought back a paycheck. And that is certainly is not what it was in the heyday, to say the least. So I think we shouldn't be over-reliant on kind of backdated statistics, because we, and the current update, I believe the people of the province deserve to get that fiscal update prior to the general election.
Okay, Mr. Ball, I'll give you the last word on this
Yeah,
question.
the Premier mentioned about 700 new car sales in the province, but he just ignores the fact that we are at 13.6% in an unemployment rate in our province right now, with 3 large-scale projects. We already know that, the impact that Alberta's having on the Newfoundland and Labrador economy, over 35,000 people laid off in Alberta. But when you look at the Alberta numbers, you will see that their unemployment rate has not changed. What's happening here is these are people that are living in Newfoundland and Labrador and now being forced to come home. So we cannot ignore these economic indicators.
Okay, sir. Let's move along to our last question for this section, and it comes from Mr. Kevin Higgins to Earle McCurdy.
Mr. McCurdy, Newfoundland and Labrador has advised the federal government that our province is no longer working with Ottawa for ongoing trade agreements with EU through CETA until the federal government honors the creation of the Fisheries Investment Fund. Newfoundland and Labrador's economy is dependent on international trade, and anything that would exclude the province from a trade agreement would be detrimental. How would you work with Ottawa to ensure Newfoundland and Labrador receives the Fisheries Investment Fund?
Well, I think quite clearly there's a commitment at both levels. I read all the correspondence. I think it was from the Harper government, it was a double cross of biblical proportions that they pulled in trying to pull back from that. I believe it's now time to reinstate that. Having said that, the plan was to have $400 million, 280 federal, 120 provincial, spent in 3 years. I believe that would end up in rushing money out the door. It wouldn't be wisely spent, and I believe it would be prudent and what I would do as Premier would be to go to the federal government and say, yes, we will honor the provincial half of that. We believe 2 of us should mutually agree that we will spread that money over a longer period of time, say, I'd suggest 10 years, to really have the best lasting impact we could in the fishery and in the fishing communities, number 1, and number 2, so that it isn't such a wallop out of the respective treasuries, and in particular the provincial treasury, at a time when the financial circumstances are challenging. So I think it would be both. It would be more manageable from a financial management point of view for the government, but even more important, it would spend the money more wisely, and we'd be able to get real long-term benefits for our fishing industry.
Mr. Ball, 1 minute for you, sir.
Well, thank you. Well, I've read all the correspondence on the CETA deal as well. One page that was glaringly missing from that correspondence was a signature from the federal government. And it took Premier Davis to go to Ottawa to figure out that he couldn't trust Stephen Harper. Well, many of us in Newfoundland and Labrador had that figured out a long time ago. Therefore, I would not have been rushing to the party at the Rooms to celebrate the signing of a CETA deal without making sure that signature was on the page. So, I questioned the commitment from the federal government way back then. The Fisheries Fund is important to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. $280 million, from federal financing or federal funds. Justin Trudeau has made a commitment that he would revisit that deal. We support, being a competitive market. When you look at trading globally, the CETA Fund is one way of doing that, and the fishery certainly, they need this injection of money so as we transition from where we are today and primarily a shell fishery into what will be a ground fishery in the future.
Mr. Davis, can you make it happen?
Yeah, it's a major issue for rural parts of our province as well, because this Fisheries Innovation Fund is really geared towards renewing the fishery. It's about research and development. It's about science. It's about renewing the infrastructure, aging infrastructure that I'm sure Mr. McCurdy can talk about in length about in our fishery and processing plants that occur around the province. It's also about marketing. And it's also about providing support to communities if there was ever a likelihood or a chance that they could be negatively impacted. And I believe Mr. McCurdy said it right when he said it was a double cross of huge proportions, because anybody who's read it and looked at the material, most everybody who's read it and looked at the material, except for some,
the signature wasn't there,
have said that it was clear. It was clear through the correspondence, through the discussions, the meetings and so on that happened, it was clear that there was an agreement. But What concerns me right now is that Mr. Trudeau has said that he's going to have a look at this, that he would honor this. So I guess he sees the merit in the decisions that have been made. What's going to happen if he decides to say, well, I've looked at the books now, and now I'm inside, similar to what Ms. Bennett said a few months ago. Now I'm inside, looked at the books. I can't do this. Who's going to hold the federal government to the fire? Is it going to be the Premier who loves Mr. Trudeau, as he said so many times, or a Premier that's going to represent Newfoundlanders and Labradorians first?
You have no issue about me representing Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. That is the reason why I asked you, when we went looking for that signature page, if this was a deal, there would be a remedy condition in that deal that you would have been able to address this current situation that you're into. And Premier Davis, you know that remedy was not in that deal. You know that signature was not there. And I can guarantee you, if elected by people of Newfoundland and Labrador, I don't care who the Prime Minister is, I will fight for what's right for Newfoundland and Labrador.
Thank you.
Well, I think on that, what we need to turn our focus to, I assume that the new government will live up to their word on that. If they don't, I think it's important to have someone there to keep their feet to the fire. That won't be done in any kind of cozy meetings. We never got anything in this province without fighting for it with the federal government.
That's a fact.
But I think that from the focus we should turn to is what are the priorities for the use of that fund? I think it's much more sensible to spread it over a long period of time. I think that's something that could be negotiated. We're moving back to the cod business. We've been out of that business for all practical purposes for 20 years, and getting into accessing markets, building on our quality, getting to the top end of that market is critical to the survival of rural Newfoundland and Labrador, and that's got to be the absolute top priority in how we approach that, that fund. And that can give us the opportunity to do it.
If you look at it, really, and if you reread it, I think you'll find it is not expected to flow until 3 years, which is the time it take before CETA. But Pete, what I want to think about here, really think about here, is who do you want in Ottawa fighting for Newfoundland and Labrador? As I said before, the person who believes that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians be first, or the person doesn't even believe we had a contract or an agreement in the first place?
Show me the signature page. Show us the signature page. If the deal is there, show us the signature page and tell us where the remedies are to address the current situation that you suggest your deal has.
You can't have it both ways, Pete.
You can't show us the page.
You can't have it both ways, Pete, where you don't believe there's an agreement, but yet you're going to fight for it.
Is the page available?
I don't know how you square that.
Is the page available, or are you hiding that?
I guess the new Prime Minister is good to his word, then it won't matter about that signature page. We'll get on with getting the work done to say, how do why can't we do in this province what they do in Iceland and in Norway and in Louisiana and have our own marketing council, our own brand, and say, we're proud of our fish. This is Newfoundland and Labrador seafish food we're putting into the market, and we're going to be at the top end of the quality spectrum so we can get the kind of return that'll put vibrancy in our fishing communities.
Very quick answer from each one of you. Can we do what we need to do for the fishery with $400 million? Mr. Ball?
It's going to take more than $400 million. We're going to need partnerships with industry. We're going to need partnership, with our harvesters, and certainly government has to be at the table at both levels, federal and provincial. That is the reason why we've already put a resolution through the floor of the Liberal Party of Canada, which would give our province joint management and some say in the research and quota sharing in the province.
Davis.
This is an initiative to bring our fishery back to its grand nature as it can be, and Mr. McCurdy just said it very, very well. We've got the finest seafood products in the world. We can market those, we can develop those, and we can provide a significant economic driver for rural.
Could we do it with $400 million?
No. That would be a start to get it underway. That will help renew our infrastructure. It will help renew marketing. But the industry then has to develop and grow, and we'll be there as a partner with them as we have before.
Mr. McCurdy?
The $400 million is a goodly sum of money to try and help turn things around. Private sector investment is a big part of our economy generally and of the fishing industry. I understand that from being in the fishery, the importance of private sector investment in our economy, but it has to be buttressed by a strong public sector as well. In this case, I believe that allows us, certainly is a very, very good start in saying, can we turn the corner? Can we make change considerably from where we are now, and can we settle into a future fishery? We won't have as many people because the people who are currently in the fishery are getting in the later years of their working lives, and we'll have a different fishery in 10 years' time than we have today, and we have to. I think that's why I felt that fund was critical, because it would give us some resources to get out there and do that job.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'd like to thank our panelists for their questions tonight. This concludes the first part of our debate. We'll return on Rogers and Eastlink after this break. Thank you very much. And we are back. You're joining the leaders' debate here at the Gander Arts and Culture Centre, hosted by the Gander and Area Chamber of Commerce. It's carried on Rogers TV and on Eastlink. You're here with a live audience, and with me here is our timekeeper, Fallon White. We've been hearing questions from our panel across from us here, and now we have questions from both our audience and from social media. In this segment, the leaders will have 1 minute each to respond or address the question, and then we will have a 2-minute period where they can debate amongst themselves. Our first question comes from social media. I have it here, and it is this. It's for Mr. Davis. Is it true that your government is paying $100,000 per month to rent a hangar in Gander while you rent space in the government air services hangar to an airline operation in St. John's for $1 per month? And why did your government issue a tender for air travel within our province that specifically excluded the 2 locally owned airlines from all government air travel, while giving total exclusivity to that same airline that you are giving the St. John's hangar to for $1 a month?
That's a lot of question.
That's a long and specific, very specific question.
Yeah,
Do you know the answer?
Are you fellows really doing that?
Can you run it by me again there?
It says that you are paying $100,000 a month to rent a hangar in Gander while renting space in the government air services hangar to an airline operation in St. John's for $1 a month.
Yeah.
That's the first part.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm not familiar with what our airlines are actually talking about. So I really can't. I really don't. I'm not familiar with the contracts, to be honest with you, Pete.
I guess
it's a pretty
also
specific question. You must admit.
Very specific. Somebody apparently might have a beef here. They're also alleging that you specifically excluded the 2 locally owned airlines from all government travel while giving total exclusivity to that same airline that's getting the hangar for $1 a month.
Yeah, so wouldn't that be a local airline as well? So I can't, I got to tell you, Pete, I'd be quite honest with you. Like
Perhaps we
it
can...
obviously sounds like someone who's not happy with what a process is. I can't speak to the contract or the bidding process that's in place. Not able to do it.
I guess the question generally, is there any favoritism or specifically targeted a preference for one particular company running an airline in this province?
Yeah, well, I'd certainly hope not. And again, I can't speak to this particular case. There is province has air as an air branch and as a part of Department of Transportation Works. It includes operations of air services for firefighting services. There is also medical services and transportation that's done by government services, also on a contract basis, and also on scheduled flights and SCEDEVACs and so on from Labrador, but I can't speak to the specific contract.
Anybody else want to add anything, or?
Well, the specific contract, that the question is about, I'm not familiar with that either, but what I do know is that we've seen a significant increase in the number of exemptions that we've seen in the province in recent years, and it's so this is one of the reasons why we really need to do a better job with procurement in Newfoundland and Labrador. How we spend our taxpayers' money, we need to make sure that we spend that wisely. If this particular case here is something that is an example that we need to look at, well, what I would suggest is we go looking for that through the access to information. But I will say that we've seen a significant increase in the number of exemptions, that things are not publicly tendered in the last few years, primarily by this administration.
Mr. McCurdy, anything on this particular?
Well, I'm not familiar with the details. You fellas wouldn't really do it like that, would you? That sounds like buy high and sell low to me, and that's not a great strategy. Anyway, I don't know. I have no information on that whatsoever.
All right. We will move along. We have a question from an audience member, Mr. Robert Paddock. Are you there, sir? Mr. Paddock, if you would.
Yes, good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm the chairperson for the Christian Home Educators of Newfoundland and Labrador. We're a very small group. We are affiliated with the Homeschool Legal Defence Association of Canada, which is a much larger entity. And my question to all potential leaders would be, in your review of education in the province, we, being involved in home education for the last number of years, have come to realize that the Ministry of Education and the Department of Education don't seem to be really very educated themselves in homeschooling and the concept of homeschooling. Would you folks as leaders be willing to take up the challenge in any education review to put special emphasis in educating your people as to the value of homeschooling as an alternative? It's definitely not for everybody, I would admit that, but would you agree tonight to take it as a challenge to look into it as a potential alternative?
Okay, Mr. Paddock, I believe we have the question, and we're trying to limit the questions to 30 seconds. Gentlemen, who would like to start this? Mr. Davis?
Yes, certainly, absolutely. Yeah, I've seen great examples where homeschooling has been very effective and has produced good results and a good level and a strong level of education for families. And if you believe that there's a need for a better and stronger understanding of homeschooling within public service, within the Department of Education, also within, I would imagine, through school boards and through people who stakeholder groups in education, then I'm certainly not going to disagree with that, and I would be fully in favor and supportive of improving our own education, our own understanding of homeschooling. Absolutely would.
All right, Ms. McCurdy.
I certainly not going to give any baffle-gab in a matter I'm not knowledgeable on. I think that's something I have to get input from people who know more, find out what research is done on it and so on, but would be glad to have the conversations with people who have an interest in the area.
My focus is really on educational outcomes, and we have a number of options that are available to us across the province. So absolutely, this is the reason why I've already initiated and said that a policy of a Liberal government would primarily do a Premier's Task Force on educational outcomes. That would include curriculum review. The focus here is to make sure that our students, either if it's through homeschooling or in our K-12 system, is to make sure that they are prepared for post-secondary education. So all of this would be considerations in the Premier's Task Force on educational outcomes.
Is it anybody's understanding that homeschooling in this province has, less resources perhaps than it has in other provinces? I'm not sure myself, but Mr. Davis, do you have any insight on that?
I don't have a sense of where we are versus other provinces. I wouldn't be able to say, but just to reiterate what I commented earlier, I know of circumstances where homeschooling takes place within families and with great results and great outcomes.
I've had families that approach me, and you talk about, when you look at resources, things like books and supplies and those sorts of things, and they have told me that they are not available. So if they were available in the public system, obviously consideration would have to be made. All of this would come out in the task force review when you look at educational outcomes. As I said, our focus is making sure our students are prepared for post-secondary education and given that opportunity.
Mr. McCurdy, anything further on this?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next question is from Mr. Gerald Saunders. Are you there, sir? Mr. Saunders, we'll just whistle a tune as you make your way over. We are asking people who've submitted their names to find a position close to the microphone to save some time here. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
My name is Gerald Saunders, and I've been advocating through the local newspaper for a new facility to replace lakeside homes. Anybody who lives in Gander area knows what an inadequate facility it is. And while I'm not asking you to give a commitment to replace it, I just want to let you know that it's a very demoralizing place, Lakeside Homes is. It's a horrible place to die, and it's even more horrible to live there. If you talk to the workers there, that they will tell you the same thing.
If we could get to a question, sir, we're really trying to...
Well, okay, thank you. Would you give all three of you comment on this and give an assurance to the people of this area that your government will take a look at this facility with the view to replacing it and report back to the people in a timely period.
Mr. McCurdy?
Well, I think the answer to look at it, sure. I mean, our seniors have a right to live out their retirement years with dignity and respect. I think that's the fundamental building block. If there are circumstances in particular areas where that's not possible, then we have to look at that and find a way to correct it.
Gentlemen?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Earle is saying, that and we've grown, personal care homes have grown around the province, driven by private operators who, in many cases, I've seen around are first-class facilities. And long-term care homes, we've talked about it earlier, the need for long-term care that provides a quality of life. And as the gentleman in his question related to, and it has to be one where people can live their lives with dignity, with a quality of health care and a quality of life that's second to none. These seniors in our province, our aging population have been the driving force of Newfoundland and Labrador for their entire lives in most cases, most all cases. They are the people who made us what we are. We celebrate what a great culture and great people we are in the province. Well, that's because of the people that came before us that made us what we are. They deserve good quality care, comfortable, good living conditions, and a quality of life that can be as best as possible for them.
Mr. Ball?
I mean, I've never met a Newfoundlander or a Labradorian that says we should not treat our seniors with dignity and make sure that they have good housing, they have good care in their senior years. The lakeside homes that Earle just mentioned is a prime example of that. And it's the reason why we need to make sure that we plan for the aging demographic that we have in our province. So replacing infrastructure is part of that. But we also know that 40% of our long-term care needs can be taken care of and can be addressed by working with seniors who want to live in their own homes and in their home community. So putting those supports in place is still the most cost-efficient way to do that. But 60% of those seniors will require long-term care, and that comes down to the investment in infrastructure like lakeside homes. And so when you look at the infrastructure needs in the province, certainly a new Liberal government would take that on as a priority.
There's been an awful lot of facilities in the province around the same age and similar design. Was it mid-70s or something like that, lakeside homes?
Yes, there was a big row between Peckford and the provincial government, and the federal government at the time, if you remember, Pete, with regard to priorities. Feds wanted to put it there and the province didn't.
Right.
But, there are 20 or 30 seniors now occupying beds at James Peyton Memorial Hospital who should be in a facility like lakeside homes. But we don't even, not only is the facility inadequate, but the number of beds available is totally woefully inadequate as well.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anything further on this, Mr. Davis?
Exactly what I talked about with long-term care, this emergent, immediate need for more long-term care beds in our province. And the fastest way that we can alleviate those pressures in emergency rooms, in healthcare facilities, and in acute care beds where they're occupying, it's not the right place for them to be in an acute care bed, is to tackle that right away, and that's what we're doing in our plan.
Mr. McCurdy, you're going to say the fastest way is not necessarily the best way.
Sorry?
You're going to say the fastest way is perhaps not necessarily the best way?
No, I'm not going to say that at all.
No? Okay. Don't mean to put words in your mouth.
Now you mention it. No, I think what's interesting is how often quality of life considerations and good, prudent financial management considerations for government are in fact compatible. And I don't think there's any case in point that speaks to that more eloquently, the whole situation surrounding seniors. That's why, not only to have those seniors in hospital care, not only is that not appropriate from the point of view of the proper care for them, but it's also by far the most costly way to do it. So sometimes an upfront investment, your choice is pay now or pay more later, and the upfront investment really pays off. And that's why I think such a focus has to be on getting a new professionalized home care workforce underway to handle the growth in the future. And if we do have to invest in, and from time to time we will, in long-term care facilities, let's do that with direct public investment of public dollars.
Last quick word to Mr. Ball.
Yeah, thank you. This is one of the key things of it when you put together a team that you want to actually govern and represent the province. And I'm very proud that Dr. John Hagee, who has been a past president of the Canadian Medical Association, has made this case very familiar to me. We understand that when you, what we call bed blocking, with acute care beds being tied up by seniors who are medically discharged waiting for long-term care placement, it adds cost to the overall healthcare system and therefore the need for long-term care.
Okay, we're going to have a question now from Alicia Anderson, and I'll give a heads up to Joe Goodyear that he will be next. So is Alicia available and ready? There you go. Thank you very much.
Small business in central Newfoundland is arguably the backbone of our economy. Some people would argue that enough has not been done to support small business initiatives. If elected, what would your government do to support small businesses within central Newfoundland as well as rural Newfoundland in general?
Mr. Ball, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Alicia. I've come from a background of over 30 years in small business, and most of that time has been in a small community of less than 5,000 people. Backbone, small businesses is not only the backbone of rural Newfoundland and Labrador, or rural Newfoundland and Labrador, it's the backbone of the economy in our province right now. It employs well over 95% of all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So creating the environment for success, working with small business owners, working within the regions where they actually operate is important. Making sure that you have competitive tax regimes in place, that you have a workforce that's available. And so therefore, one of the things that we've talked about is a human resource strategy, working with our K-12 system, making sure that they understand that when they graduate, that the jobs are there ready for them, therefore would support small business owners in the province. Small business is the backbone of the economy in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Mr. Davis.
Yeah, absolutely right, and small business is important to all parts of our province. And I mentioned earlier tourism. Tourism is 2,500 tourism and small business operators directly related to tourism. About 83% of them are actually small business that are in the tourism sector. And what we've done is to partner with tourism industry to drive a market and drive opportunity. But there's more out there than just tourism, and there are many small businesses. And one of them that we hear about with small business operators quite often is their cost and their taxation costs. And while Newfoundland and Labrador has the lowest tax regime in Atlantic Canada today, we know that small business is important enough that we have to achieve, and we've made a commitment that we'll work towards creating the lowest corporate tax rate for small businesses anywhere in the country, and that'll help small business grow in our province.
Mr. McCurdy.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Mr. Ball's numbers there, but nonetheless, small business is obviously a big part of the community. It can't possibly be 95% of just look at the public sector alone.
Medium small business.
Not 95%, no, not even close.
Small to medium-sized business.
That doesn't diminish the importance of the small business sector to the economy of the province. And I think the single most important thing that government can do to assist small business is to do what is reasonably possible for government to create the conditions for a thriving economy where people have disposable money to spend on small business. Without people out there with money in their pockets, then it's tough for businesses to survive. So I think that's one of the most important areas. I'm really pleased that we have a small business operator and business manager among our team of candidates who will be running for us in this election, because I think that is a sector that should be part of any caucus to help inform good decision making.
How are small and medium businesses doing in the province today? Are we generally satisfied with what we've done and where they are now, or are we still looking uphill?
Yeah. We have the lowest rate of small business growth in the country right now, and what I was talking about when I mentioned the 95 plus was a small and medium-sized business in the province. Well, these were businesses less than 500 employees, but what we get in particular in most of the smaller communities in our province are the small 5, 10, 15 employees. And given my own experience, we have 16,000 businesses in the province right now. We can work with 5,000 of those successful ones and create one job. That's a mega project in our province. That's how important the small business community is, for me in the Liberal Party. And we have a great team of many successful small business owners that are part of the Liberal team, putting their name on a ballot on the November 30th election. So small business growth in Newfoundland and Labrador is essential for our economy to rebound.
To answer your question, Pete, you can never stop and rest. It's never good enough. We always have to achieve and work towards doing more. Research Development Corporation since 2009 has invested $111 million in more than 600 individual projects. That's a significant investment. They've leveraged $345 million further from those investments. We've also have now entered into the venture capital business, which is really about startups and people and concept ideas who want to grow a business. And venture capital is a great way to provide funding for those jobs and for those for the growth of businesses and those ideas and those visions and those concepts. And it also provides expertise, business expertise, to help young entrepreneurs or inexperienced entrepreneurs who may be older to grow their own business. So I think there's lots of room for growth of small business in our province. And one of the beauties of many of the small business concepts and visions that we see around, they can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to be in an urban area or a centralized area. It can happen anywhere in the province.
And I guess one thing we'd want to do is review the current suite of business programs that are in place with people in business to see whether, in fact, they meet the need. I think some do and some don't, and I think there's room to revamp those programs of supports that are in place to best suit the needs of the economy.
Okay. Mr. Goodyear, are you there, sir?
Yes, thank you. Tonight there's been a lot of talk about demographics and the situation that Newfoundland finds itself in, and unfortunately demographics predicts the future fairly accurately. There's not a lot we can do about it. However, one of the tools you have at your disposal is immigration and policies towards that, and things like the refugee crisis, where we're looking at 25,000 refugees coming into Canada. Where do you see Newfoundland moving in terms of actually encouraging immigration, not just talking about it, but affecting policy?
Start with Mr. Davis.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think there's significant value for Newfoundland and Labrador to provide open doors for immigration. Not everybody agrees with that, and there's many people in our province who don't agree that immigration is healthy for our province or for our country. I certainly do, and I would be surprised to hear differently from any one of my colleagues here on the stage. Association for New Canadians is the only organization in Newfoundland and Labrador that is registered or in partnership with the federal government to coordinate immigration for our province. And we've met with them. We've met with them a couple of times. We've asked them how we can assist them and support them to provide support to them so that we can take more refugees who are looking for a new home and a place to live, and also how we work with them on immigration. But like some of the other areas that we've talked about tonight, I think there are great opportunities for business. A lot of businesses do very well with immigrants from a variety of countries that come to Newfoundland and Labrador, want to bring their families, want to make this their home, and want to set up. We've got to work under the federal guidelines that exist. We've been advocating for changes to those guidelines because the current guidelines do not positively impact areas of our province where unemployment rates distort their ability to enter into these programs, and there are challenges for businesses that exist in our province. But we've lobbied the government, and we'll continue to lobby the new government and work with them to try and change some of those rules.
Mr. McCurdy?
Well, other than Aboriginals, I guess we were all immigrants, our forefathers and mothers. So we're going to need immigration in the future, and you know, I think that's clear to me, and we need to work towards that. We also have to put a strong focus, not to take away from the immigration one, on providing opportunities for youth so they can stay in the province and make a go of it. With respect to immigration, I'd like to point out that we really need, if we're going to welcome people and have them come here and want to stay, then the temporary foreign worker program that's there currently is not the right way to do it. If they're going to come here and contribute to the economy, they should be able to come to gain citizenship and to stay permanently. If it's a rotating door, they're in and they're out and they have no real rights, that's a poor way to build a future economy. I think it's wrong-headed and should be replaced by a more forward-looking immigration strategy that takes account of the future demographics of the province, as the questioner so rightly pointed out. One thing we do, there's a lot of stuff we don't know, but one thing we do know is we're going to have a lot of seniors and not enough working age people in the relatively near future, and we have to address that, start addressing that shortfall now, or we'll be in a real mess.
Mr. Ball.
Yeah, so what we're talking about here is a population growth strategy and how we meet the future demands for small businesses that either service Newfoundlanders and Labradorians or they need, access to workers. So two things here. One is a labor market review that will give predictability to what jobs are available. Keep in mind, those jobs must be available to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians first. So we'll use our educational system or institutions to actually educate Newfoundlanders and Labradorians to prepare to those jobs. Then we need to look at immigration. Immigration is certainly a tool that we have available to us. And the Premier says that it's a priority for his government. Well, I'll tell you how big a priority that was. They cut the funding for the Office of Immigration in the budget that he was a part of. And so therefore you can't stand in front of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and tell business operators and small business owners that is a priority for us when we make it more difficult to bring immigrants into the province and therefore address some of the needs that we're discussing here tonight.
Mr. Davis, your response to that?
Yeah, I've stated my position on this. I've made my position quite clear. I know businesses that struggle to keep their doors open because of the challenges for employment, where they know that immigration has been critical to the growth and development and operations of their own businesses, and having the inability to replace those immigrants who are now being sent out of the country, it provides significant challenge. And Mr. McCurdy said it right. How do you create a stable business when you don't have a stable workforce? And we've taken steps, we see that coming, and we've taken steps to improve on education opportunities for our students. We encourage students to seek skilled trades and go to the college, go to College North Atlantic, go to private colleges, go to Memorial University and continue to learn and develop those skills that are going to be much needed in the future. And also, and as I said, and the question was about immigration. And immigration is a key part of that. And I know it's important to business. I know lots of business operators who rely on immigration and are challenged by the current rules forced upon us by the federal government.
That's where, Mr. McCurdy?
Yeah, I think part and parcel of looking forward and saying we're going to have a significant expansion on the level of immigration we have in the province is folding into our education system an appreciation of the differences in people and kind of engendering the kind of respect that we need to have, because I don't think we should just rest on our laurels and say we're a friendly people, we're great. We have to specifically address that, and make our kids aware, because we're very it's not a very cosmopolitan population at the moment, a little bit in St. John's, not much, and really build into our education system, teaching the kind of respect for people who have differences, and in particular visible differences from the rest of us.
Yeah, just one quick comment on Mr. McCurdy here, just to follow up. In Newfoundland and Labrador, we have 5% of our population that was born internationally, whereas in Canada that number is about 22%.
Okay. Last question comes from an email, and it is this, and I think we'll begin with Mr. Davis, since it seems to be perhaps targeted towards you, sir. It asks, is the question, are we doing better than we were 10 years ago, or should it be, are we doing as better as we should be, given all the revenue we've had in that period?
I think clearly we're doing much better. And I talked about some of those indicators earlier, and there are many of them. I talked about poverty as an example. I know last night I was asked, where am I getting my statistics? Well, Statistics Canada says that in 2003, we had the worst level of poverty in the country, the worst level of poverty. And we've set out a plan, we set out a target very early back in those days that in 10 years that we would change that. And 10 years later, now 12 years later, but in 2013, because that's what the statistical measurements were, in 10 years later, we had the lowest level of poverty in Canada. And Pete, that's a lot of hard work. That didn't happen by accident. And I think that's something we should celebrate as a province, we should celebrate as a people. And that says, and not only that, there's 38,000 fewer people. Our population has increased since 2003, but yet there's 38,000 people less that are considered to be living in poverty, comparable to the same parameters when you measure that to 2003. So I think we're better off. We have national franchise that operate here in Newfoundland and Labrador, have the highest sales of anywhere in the country. We have retail sales are higher than they've ever been before. That's Newfoundlanders and Labradorians that are using the revenues that they have available to them, which is driving the economy.
Okay, again, and I'm going to move along to Mr. McCurdy, but the question implies that we're doing better and that we should be. The question really is, are we doing as well as we should be given the amount of revenue we've had come in over the last decade? Mr. McCurdy.
Quite frankly, I think we had a missed opportunity in terms of really laying the foundation for the years to come, knowing full well that we had an aging population. We didn't suddenly find out in the past year or so that what our demographics are going to be. That's been well established, well researched. So we had the opportunity to lay a solid foundation. I think in a number of areas we missed that. Good example, we could have taken advantage of the prosperity to by now have built and paid for a new Waterford hospital. And we didn't do that. I think we could have had in place the initial investment to have a primary health care system with community clinics all over, in the province as a foundation for our health care system, and a more, in place of the present emphasis on acute care. There's a host of areas, I think, where we could have laid a more solid foundation. We acted and conducted ourselves, or the government conducted itself, as though the $100 oil prices would last forever, when history would tell you, or a rearview mirror would tell you, that in fact oil prices and other commodity prices go up and down, and we should have really, I think, laid a stronger foundation with that, with our moment in the sun there when prices were at virtually record high levels.
Mr. Ball, have we done as well as we should have with the money we've enjoyed over the last 10 years?
There is no other government in the history of this province that had as much money as this current administration, $25 billion. About 4.6 billion of that was from the Atlantic Accord, so we knew that money was never coming back. The rest of it was from a finite resource. So I think anyone that was planning for the future would say that we cannot rely on oil and be so reliant on oil that we just forget other industries. And essentially that's what has happened. We have done very little creation of revenue from other sources beside oil. When you look at the history of the world, $100 barrel of oil is a rare occurrence. And this government has spent the money as if $100 a barrel oil would last forever, forgetting the fact that it's a finite resource, that we're pumping it out. You can't spend it twice. So when you look at the indicators that we have in our province, when you look at the debt where we are today in 2015, we are where we were in 2003. When you look at the per capita debt for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, we are over to $22,000 per capita debt. So this is the highest in the country. And since this administration mentioned its plan to reach the national average in 10 years, it's went up nearly $7,000. So I'd say ignore those plans, don't announce those anymore. Since you announce those plans, it just continues to get worse.
Oh, Mr. Dahl questioned last night where statistics and information comes from, because sometimes you can use them to your advantage or disadvantage, I suppose, how you want to use them. But if you compare our debt today to our GDP, it's significantly different. In 2003, 25 cents on every dollar was being spent to service the debt. That wasn't to reduce the debt. That was just to serve. That was the cost of borrowing, 25 cents on a dollar. Today, it's about half of that. So are we better off than we were in 2003? We are. People sometimes compare us to Norway, and they look at Norway. If you look at Norway, it's been in the oil business now for 50 plus years. In the first 25 or 30 years they were in the oil business, it was much like where we were the first 25 or 30 years that we've been in the oil business. Our province was broken. Our infrastructure was failing. Businesses were closing. People were packing up their houses and they were leaving our province, and they were running away to a greener pasture somewhere else in Canada or beyond. And businesses weren't thriving. They couldn't. They were, like as I said, they were closing their doors. And today, businesses are here and they're making a go of it. We're partnering with businesses all over the province. People are coming back to Newfoundland and Labrador, slowly coming back, but they're coming back to Newfoundland and Labrador. They're seeing that there's an opportunity for Newfoundland and Labrador in the future, and that's all built on the work and hard work that we've done, a variety of programs and services to give people a chance in this province.
Jump on in here, Mr. McCurdy.
Yeah, and I think there's no question we're better off than we were 10 years ago. I don't think anyone would stand up and question that. We've had a huge revenue flow that we've never previously experienced. The question is, did we use that to really build that solid foundation? I would question that we did. I accept and agree that we needed to rebuild our infrastructure. We had a huge infrastructure deficit.
Still do.
Had we been maybe in not quite such a hurry, everybody loves a tax reduction, me included. But had we not been in such a hurry to do that and said, before we do that, let's pay down that huge debt there that's going to loom on that Muskrat Falls project, we really in a sense, government spent the money twice. We could do one or the other, but we couldn't. To do both put us in the position we are today, where our deficit this year on current account, on operating account, is 1.1 billion. We're putting 570 million, I believe it is, into Muskrat Falls, and another 600 million or so in those tax cuts. We spent it twice. We're in a significant deficit position, and it's going to be a challenge to work our way out of it over the next.
Can't believe it's taken this long for Muskrat Falls to come up. Mr. Ball.
Well, I just want to address the debt servicing position that the Premier just mentioned. We are approaching, after this year, close to $1 billion in debt servicing right now. So when you look at and comparing us to Norway, which has about $1 trillion right now in its sovereignty fund, what we're seeing right now is production levels in our offshore declining. We know the price of oil is down. We do pick up some offset, with our currency right now. But would I look back at this and say that we missed some opportunities with $25 billion? Yes, I do, because we have failed to create the new revenue streams that's required to support a sustainable economy, not only in rural Newfoundland and Labrador, but in the urban centers as well.
All right. I think that concludes our time for the questions. Thanks very much to our audience members and for those who sent them in online. Sorry? No, we're finished now. Sorry, sir. That was the last question. My apologies. We're going to move along to the final section, which is the questions from one leader to another.
I put the first question in the bag here on the floor, and were they selected or what?
Well, I think they probably were. I was given a certain number of names, and that's the number of questions that we had time for. I apologize if yours wasn't one of them. Thank you very much, sir. We do the best we can here. The first question will be from Mr. Dwight Ball to Mr. Paul Davis. You have 30 seconds to ask your question, and then you have a minute to respond, Mr. Davis, and then there are 2 minutes of open debate between just the two of you. Mr. Ball.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. Earlier on in the debate tonight, the Premier may mention that we're currently into a fiscal crisis in the province. So it's been over 6 months since the budget, and in the last few weeks you've made millions of dollars in pre-election commitments, and you have not provided a pre-election provincial economic update. I wrote your office late September. I've not received a response back from your office. Will you give us, the province, people of Newfoundland and Labrador, a budget update? What is the fiscal situation of the province?
Mr. Davis.
Well, I tell Mr. Ball very clearly, and he knows what our forecasts were for oil revenue, and he knows the reality of where those oil revenues are. The commitments and announcements and finalizing announcements that we've done over the last number of months were all part of our budget. Every one of them were announced in the budget as part of our budget plan, our financial plan for this year. So if you look at where oil is, you look at where our budget is, you can do a calculation very quickly to determine the circumstances that we're in.
So as
on the revenue side, but the expenditure side is another matter, right?
Yeah. So, and what's at stake here too is, of course, the production, the currency levels, and the price per barrel of oil. So as Premier of the province, as CEO of the province, as out making, election commitments, pre-election commitments, I think it's fair that if you add that number, there's no assumption that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians would know that. That's your office that's responsible for that. You are the person in charge of the financial situation that you call a fiscal crisis right now. We know the Minister of Finance will not be around once the writ is dropped. So I ask you, give us the number. What is the current situation when it comes to the deficit of the province? Where's the revenue? Where's the expense line compared to you were at budget announcement?
Well, last time I checked, the minister will still be the minister until the new minister is sworn in. But so he's not going anywhere in the very near future. I can tell you that, Mr. Ball. But I can tell you is that you're right. That the crisis that struck every region of the country, every country in the world that relies on oil revenue. And it was a crisis that struck that wasn't seen or predicted by anybody to be where it is today. And even after we went to the OPEC meeting last year, that happens later in November. We went to the OPEC meeting last year, and we were waiting to see what their outcomes would be and what actions and steps that OPEC would take, because they greatly influence oil prices. And then we were waiting for those answers. And just a second, Mr. Ball, let me finish, and you can have the floor in a moment. So none of that was predicted. It was a fiscal crisis. And what we did is we made choices as a government and how we're going to work through that. We wanted to make sure our economy stayed strong. We didn't choose to simply lay off thousands of employees. I chose not to simply lay off thousands of employees because we know what that would do to our economy. We've seen it happen in our province before. We've seen it in other provinces where other provinces have elected to make massive layoffs. We decided not to do that. We decided to continue to make investments in our province. We know that drives our economy. We know it creates jobs. And today, the sky is not falling. Newfoundland and Labrador are still trucking along.
My question is about the financial situation of the province. And as CEO, as Premier of the province right now, all I'm asking for on behalf of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, what is the fiscal situation of this province? If you're managing the affairs of the province, if you're making pre-election commitments, if you're spending the money that was allocated in your budget, regardless of what's happening with OPEC, regardless of what's happening globally, there's a management issue here. So what I'm asking you is, as the Chief Financial Officer of this province, as Premier of this province, what is the current fiscal situation of this province? Where are we? Are we on track with the deficit that you predicted, or are we behind? Where are we?
So you have to consider all those other factors. So you can't say you just can't discount.
I'm just looking for the number.
But you can't discount those other factors.
I'm asking for the number.
You have to look.
You're the person in charge of the affairs of this province. You're making the pre-election commitments. You are managing the affairs. All I'm asking you, as CEO of this province, what is the fiscal situation of Newfoundland and Labrador?
Well, I appreciate the lecture.
We've had this number in November the 6th in the past, so this is not new.
We've got to move along to the next question. I will give you a very short period of time to try to...
Sorry for speaking while he's interrupting, Pete, but that
my apologies. We'll give you the last word here.
Right. Fiscal circumstances at our province are very important to us. We continue to make investments that drives our economy. We continue to look at what's happening around the world because we know that there's significant volatility in our oil prices today, and it moves from day to day. It goes up and down from day to day, and it changes the charts and changes the graphs, and it changes where our outcome is. But we're continuing to make investments. We're driving our economy. We've got a 5-year plan to bring us back to a balanced budget once again.
All right, we'll leave it there, and we'll go along to the next question. This one comes from Mr. Davis for Mr. McCurdy. Sir.
Thank you, Pete. Mr. McCurdy, you've talked about what's a very important matter for working families in this province, being childcare. Now, we were working through a 10-year plan to double our investments, our annual investments in childcare, from 26 million to over 50 million this year. We're about a $47 million range to improve what we found through our consultation process were on people's minds, which is the number of childcare spaces, the quality of them, and also what it costs. And we have a suite of programs to assist. Well, while we know that childcare is still far too expensive in Newfoundland and Labrador, you're selling a plan that's going to result in $15 a day childcare. Mr. McClare, your federal leader, has frequently said he'd only be able to do it with partnership with provinces. My question to you, sir, is how do you propose to do that, and what will be the cost to the province?
Well, first of all, it's unfortunate that Mr. Mulcair is not the Prime Minister, because I think on childcare he had a plan that would have seen for the first time someone coming through with a real national childcare plan for this province. I've had people on the doorstep tell me that they had to quit their job because the cost of childcare exceeded what they took home in their paycheck. So, and the thing about childcare is what it really is an investment in our people. It's an investment that provides the opportunity for young families to actually have kids. So we will deal with start dealing with our demographic deficit, and it's an investment in our economy. The estimates I've seen are for every dollar invested in childcare, ultimately leads to $2.78 recycling through the economy. So that's the importance of it. The $15 a day one clearly is not something that at this point this province could do on its own for all the child care needs without the participation of the federal government. I hope that the current government will see past its original thing, which is a modified version of what the Conservatives put in place with the universal child care benefit, and put in place or work with provinces to put in place a national child care program.
Okay, gentlemen, 2 minutes to debate that topic.
Yeah, and you know, he's answered the question very well, because I was looking what it was going to cost to implement the child care strategy, because we know child care expenses for families is significant, and it's impacting economy, it's impacting ability for families to work. And while we know we got to go from here to here, and we're working towards that as a government, and we've created a suite of programs. But we quite often will hear the NDP talking about those significant investments, but I've yet to hear anyone say in a leadership position exactly what that would cost and how they pay for it. I get all the facts that it helps drive money through the economy. I understand all of that and how it benefits the economy. But somewhere government has to take funding from your budget to put into childcare if you're going to be able to do it for $15 a day. And I was wondering what that's going to cost. Do you have an assessment on that?
Well, first of all, don't confuse a federal platform item with a provincial campaign. That was a particular policy of the federal government. If we were elected, we would strive to put in place a comprehensive, universal, public, affordable child care program to allow working families to continue to work, not to have situations where single moms are forced home with no other recourse, only income support, or, as I've also had said to me in my canvassing, people decide they can't afford to have children. That's a terrible outcome, so we have to invest as much as we can. I understand it's not a bottomless pit, that it can't happen overnight, that it will take time to build up the program to the level we'd all like to see. I think that's another example where the foundation wasn't laid as comprehensively as it might have been during our years of very substantial kind of windfall revenues.
Okay. Mr. McCurdy, you have a question for Mr. Ball in 30 seconds or less.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ball, you're now going to the electorate and trying to convince them that you're offering meaningful change from the current administration. There were a couple of key issues in recent months where your policies look quite similar. Redistribution of seats at strip representation from Earle, Newfoundland being one. But in particular, I'd like to focus on minimum wage and ask why the Liberal caucus supported or opposed our recommendation, our private member's motion, to increase the minimum wage and adjust it annually to the cost of living to help people have more money to spend in the economy. You and Mr. Davis's party voted that down in the House of Assembly. And you know, do you really expect people to be able to make a decent living and contribute to the economy at 10-something an hour?
Mr. Ball.
Yeah, to the question about minimum wage, what we suggested here is that work with industry, work with labor, and what we would develop here is a strategy to put in place planned and measured minimum wage increases that would be tied to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. Therefore, small business owners, which is the backbone of the economy in Newfoundland and Labrador, the largest employer, without this significant cost that you would see with such a large increase in the beginning, they could actually plan for this. So it's addressing the minimum wage. Issue in the province, tie it to cost of living, so that then workers and both small business owners primarily would understand what the cost was to do business. What happens if you can't plan for this? We see adjustments that business owners make. Therefore, in some ways, in many cases, it has a negative impact on employees, because what you see is reduced hours of operation, you see reduction of hours for employees. So in a lot of cases, what it does, it takes money out of the pockets of the employees that need it the most.
But the facts don't back that up. I mean, there's been research done on the impact of minimum wage on employment, and there's no correlation to say that increase in minimum wage, employment reduces. But the thing is, a lot of the companies who are paying minimum wage jobs are, in fact, big box stores, big national chains. Clearly, they can afford to pay more, and if they paid more, then the people who work in those stores, and there's a lot of them, would have more money to spend in the small business that are.
So are you suggesting a two-tier minimum wage?
Of the economy.
Are you suggesting a two-tier?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm suggesting one.
So are you forgetting
minimum wage?
about the
No, don't
small
put words
business
in my
owners?
mouth. I'm talking about one minimum wage, a standard one. We lost 4 years. The minimum wage stagnated for 4 consecutive years. We brought in a motion. We said, look, in fact, it wasn't just us. The panel put together by Mr. Davis's government, or by his predecessor's government, the minimum wage advisory panel, whatever it's called, they went out and held public hearings. And the result of that, they then recommended that there be catch-up from 2010 up to 2014 to make up for the lost purchasing power, and thereafter there be, it be adjusted to keep up with the consumer price index. When the government failed to act on that, and the Minister of Labour of the day made the unfortunate statement that, well, sometimes increasing the minimum wage does more harm than good, and I'd ask more harm to who, then we brought in a motion to say, call upon the House to implement the recommendation of the minimum wage advisory panel that the government itself had set up, and your party, Mr. Ball, and your party, Mr. Davis, voted that down, and the only people voting in favor of that to help people, you know, at the low end of the income scale to get by were the New Democrats in the House.
Last response, Mr. Ball.
Yeah, so what we've done, and we've already announced the reversal of the HST that was put in place by Mr. Davis, which puts more money back in the pockets of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, and work, you know, with the province to make sure that the minimum wage increases can be planned and can be tied to the cost of living for Newfoundlanders.
But what about those 4 lost years? Are they gone?
That's the plan that we as supporter right now, is working with industry, making sure that we.
But according to that case, they'll never catch up.
See.
They lost those 4 years, and forever and a day, you're saying tied to consumer price index. So what that tells me is a lost purchasing power between 2010 and 2014 under that plan is gone forever.
Okay, gentlemen, we have to move along to the next question. Mr. Davis has one for Mr. Ball.
Thank you, Pete. In the past year, Mr. Ball, you and members of your party have, in the House of Assembly and outside the House of Assembly, had made literally billions of dollars in promises to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. Through the House of Assembly, through question periods, through petitions, through election promises, you've made numerous promises that are going to cost huge amounts of money for Newfoundland and Labrador. You've talked about the HST, you just referred to it now. And also, your finance critic, Cathy Bennett, was even as clear to say that until we get in and understand the complexities of government, we can't say what part of government we would eliminate. What I ask you to do today, Mr. Ball, is come clean with the people of the province and tell them specifically, how are you going to afford to pay for all of these promises?
Better manage the province. That's what we will do. We will make better plans for the province. I will tell you right now, if we were to start a mega project like Muskrat Falls, one thing that we would do is make sure that we have proper government oversight. We would not let those projects cost the taxpayers and Newfoundlanders and Labradorians billions in dollars without planning for that. We've seen you already make announcements on discretionary spending. $25 million in tariffs that you thought and hoped might come back. That is not good planning, Mr. Davis. You know the answer to that. We have many vacant properties in our province right now that is still costing the taxpayers money, that if we can't use that, there is value there in either the land or the building itself. These are better planning. This is better management. This is making sure that we protect the investments that we have. We were not ready. You have not provided the proper oversight onto the Muskrat Falls project. Hence, we are now costing the ratepayers and taxpayers of this province billions of dollars more.
Last word to Mr. Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. It was only my first response to it. But don't forget Muskrat Falls, because Muskrat Falls, yes, in projects, the costs are going up. The costs are going up, and the longer it takes for projects to do, the cost is going up. But remember the people who are building Muskrat Falls. 98% of skilled labor in Muskrat Falls are Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. They're earning good-paying jobs from Muskrat Falls. Don't ever forget that Muskrat Falls is going to be a benefit for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians for a century. Let me finish, Mr. Ball, because you haven't touched on what Ms. Bennett said. Because Ms. Bennett was very, very clear publicly in saying that your government your government as a premier, your party in power, will eliminate parts of government. You will scrap parts of government. 70% of government costs are salaries. What parts of government are you going to eliminate?
What we're talking about is cutting waste in government right now.
70% is salaries.
What we talk about right now is when I talk about making sure... You're going to let me finish now?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So what we're talking about is making sure that the priorities are right. So when you look at, as an example, when you look at the Waterford Hospital right now, is making sure that we make that investment to provide the economic benefits. These are strategic investments into the province right now. When you talked about Muskrat Falls and the planning effort that went into that, we were told during that debate, which was the longest filibuster that we had in the history of the province, that as a result of the planning that was gone into that project, that we would not see significant increases in costs. And where are we today? Do you call going from 6.2 to 7.65 billion a significant increase when the project is not even 50% completed?
Cutting waste certainly sounds like cutting jobs to me, Pete.
Better management.
Okay, we will move along to the next question, and this one comes from Mr. McCurdy, and it is for Mr. Davis.
Mr. Davis, the Muskrat Falls project and its, I don't know, twin brother, the power purchase agreement, hang over electricity consumers, i.e. the people, in this province like the sword of Damocles. How much will electricity rates increase based on the most recent cost overruns, even without any further cost overruns? I think we all believe there will be more. How much will electricity rates for consumers in this province, the people in terms of, and businesses and institutions, how much will they increase when Muskrat Falls comes on stream? And what plans, if any, do you have to help those people who will be unable to afford to heat their homes because they just won't have the money to pay those bills?
The amount that the electricity rates will go up will be less than if an alternative project was chosen. That's clear. And even with the increased cost in Muskrat Falls, it still holds true, Pete, that the increase will be less than an alternative project. And Muskrat Falls will not only do that, but while we know there will be an increase in cost. There absolutely will be. Every jurisdiction in Canada who has an infrastructure problem with their electrical grids and electrical systems in this country have significant costs coming. Many of them greater than what Newfoundlanders and Labradorians will see. What Muskrat Falls will do will provide a stable electrical supply for a century or more. And when it's providing more and can produce more power than we can use, we now have a corridor to markets outside of Newfoundland and Labrador. And don't forget as well the environmental benefits that will not only impact us as a society today, but it'll positively impact future citizens of Newfoundland and Labrador, and also those where we're shipping clean green power out. This is a good project for Newfoundland and Labrador. This is one that's going to last for 100 years. This will provide stability in rates for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, and will provide a stable source of clean electricity for our province.
Okay, 2 minutes, gentlemen. 2 minutes.
All interesting, but I didn't detect in that an answer to the two questions. Number one, how much of a wallop will people get on their, and businesses get on an electricity bill? And number two, what plans are there to help those people who won't be able to afford to heat their homes?
I'm clearly on the record as saying that we will utilize revenues from the sales of our excess power to mitigate those increases to the people in Newfoundland and Labrador. We will utilize that to lower the cost of taxpayers to ratepayers in Newfoundland and Labrador.
But if you, that's well and good, but that's well and good. But a few customers that come in handy at the moment, as far as I can tell, there aren't any. But one of the, you talked about other things. The POB was asked to pick between just two options. But one of the options we didn't, that wasn't put in front of us, which has been proven elsewhere to have great potential, is the option of conserving and using less, of properly retrofitting our public buildings, our homes, of using the best practices to consume less and therefore keep the cost down. And the problem we've got now is that, best I can tell, that power purchase agreement really limits the benefits that can be gained from doing that kind of work. And so really we weren't given the people of the province, the Public Utilities Board of the province was not given the full suite of options as to how we should plan the energy to meet our energy needs of the future. It was either Muskrat Falls or that isolated island option, when there are all kinds of other possible combinations that might have gotten us to 2041 with a lot less debt hanging over our head.
All new buildings in the province today, built by the province or where we contribute to municipal buildings, are built under a silver LEED status, silver LEED qualification, which means they're more environmentally friendly, that they produce fewer or less power to operate, and also to provide a better environment for the people who work or reside in them, if they're students or whatnot. We also, under Newfoundland and Labrador housing today, we provide more supports to low-income families so they can rebuild and redevelop their own homes. They can provide insulation value, new windows, sidings, doors, insulation in roofs and basements are happening all over Newfoundland and Labrador, provided by funding through Newfoundland and Labrador Housing. And we're doing more because we are supporting low-income earners. We're providing lower taxes. Lower-income people don't pay any provincial income tax in Newfoundland and Labrador today, and that didn't happen by accident. That's projects we've done so we can benefit the people of the province and lower their costs to live and continue to live in Newfoundland and Labrador. And they provide better value, warmer homes, drier homes, and a better
I
environment.
can
We
understand
have to
why you
move
didn't
along.
want to answer the question, because I think the answer frightened the life out of people who are having great trouble paying their power bill today. And the problem with this retrofit thing is for those who can afford to put in heat pumps and geothermal units and so on, what that does, because of the power purchase agreement, is increase the unit cost to those who can't afford to do that, because we got to pay for the stuff whether we use it or not. And if we use less because some people can afford this better technology, then that means those who can't afford it, the unit price will go up, and they'll have to pay even more on their light bill. And I still would love to hear how much that light bill is going to go up, because I think it's going to hit people with a lot that they don't know is coming.
Our last question comes from Mr. Ball, and it is for Mr. McCurdy.
Thank you. Mr. McCurdy, your caucus has been critical of the CETA agreement and has even called for Newfoundland and Labrador to withdraw from the trade agreement. This is your caucus. You, however, seem to be at odds with your caucus on this issue. Does the NDP caucus, your 3 members, support CETA or not?
Well, we're now in an election campaign, Mr. Ball, as you know. We will all have new caucuses when it's over. Some will presumably be people from existing caucuses, some won't. The position that I took was related to the fisheries elements of the package. And I believe that my position, when my job at the time was to represent people in the fishery, that the CETA agreement for those people involved in the fishery, the tariff benefits and so on, were good for that industry, were helpful. The problem with these agreements, not only CETA, but a lot of others, is that they come with a tremendous amount of baggage that has the potential to do serious harm to civilized society. These investor rights provisions in those things are serious. I mean, if we had allowed what a liberal premier wanted to do was export bulk water, we could have had foreign interests having the right to take water out of here, and we wouldn't have had the right to stop it. We had the government of Canada wanted to legislate to protect Canadians by banning a manganese additive in gasoline that was poisoning the environment. And when we did that, a company successfully sued the Canadian government because they said that we have the right to poison you whether you want to be poisoned or not. That's what those trade agreements allow. So that's the aspect of that agreement that our caucus and our party finds obnoxious.
2 minutes to debate.
So, Mr. McCurdy, what I didn't hear was you went back and gave us some moments in history. What I didn't hear was the answer to the question. Your caucus, Lorraine Michael, Jerry Rogers, George Murphy, said at one point to even shred it. On December the 14th, they issued a press release and said that the province should immediately withdraw support for CETA. You, on the other end, seem to want to distance yourself from that now. So, do you support?
No, that's the caucus position.
Do you support the CETA agreement or not?
I don't support those kind of conditions that give those kinds of rights and powers to. Do you think? You think that companies should be allowed to say we have a right to poison your environment, and there's nothing you as a sovereign state can do about it? You agree with that, apparently.
If you were premier today, would you be a signatory on the CETA agreement?
If I was premier, I'd go to the government of Canada and do what Germany is now doing. That agreement is in trouble in Europe. Germany, which is a powerful member of the European Union, has said we don't like those investor state provisions. They give too much power to corporations, and we don't agree with that. So that agreement is on thin ice in Europe at the moment. I believe is a good opportunity with the change in government, which got away from the.
My question is, Mr. McCurdy, it should be simple.
No, we shouldn't negotiate.
It should be simple. Would you support? Do you support?
I support renegotiating that agreement to get rid of those investor states. I support renegotiating. You can put all the words in my mouth you like.
Well, you're going to be asked if you're premier of this province to be a signatory, or will you support it or not?
We'll propose that be renegotiated to clean out some of those investor rights provisions, and I believe we'll have a lot of support for that in Europe.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the C section of this debate. And we are moving now. I forgot your opening statements. I will not forget the closing statements. We are going to begin with Mr. McCurdy. You have 2 minutes, sir, to conclude your statements for tonight.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to maybe start with, what do we got, 2 minutes, is it?
2 minutes.
Man, you guys are tough on time. It's not like open line. You go on as long as you like.
We're not as tough on time as you are brutal on keeping to it.
Back talk. I'm sorry. I meant to say back talk, Pete. I ran into an acquaintance of mine, a young person, just a recent graduate from university a few days ago. and had a conversation. And he made a comment to me that stuck with me. He said, "My generation is screwed." We can't accept that we're living in a place where the current generation, that they look at their future prospects and say, "Man, I just wish I had the chances that my parents had," that it doesn't look very promising. I can't see how I can raise a family. I can't see how I can get a house. So I think addressing that and providing opportunities for young people is one of our, biggest challenges. It's hard to do justice to all the issues with 2 minutes. I'll reiterate a couple of key areas of focus. Opportunities for youth, care for seniors, increased focus on health care, developing our economy in a sustainable way that respects our natural environment. Our approach is different from the other parties. We're on your side, folks. That's where we stand. We speak for the values. We would tackle the challenges before us with humility, but also with determination and a sense of values that we learned from Tommy Douglas and from Jack Layton and other pioneers before, that says people come first. Fairness of opportunity, lessening of equality, sustainable use of our natural resources, treating our seniors with dignity. Those are the values that we stand for. And I believe if you understand what your values are as a political party, then that's what informs the details of your platform. It's not a matter of picking items off the shelf one by one and saying we'll do this, this, and this, because promises can be made and promises can be broken. You have to understand what your values are, what you believe in, and then you conduct yourself in government accordingly.
Thank you. The next 2 minutes is for Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Pete, and good job tonight.
Well, thank you.
But last night, by the way, they missed the opening statements too.
Did they? Oh, well, I feel better.
So maybe we should just do away with them for
But we never got a chance for last night.
No, we didn't. No, absolutely. But thank you, and thank you, Chamber, and also panelists for coming tonight, and thank all the folks that are here in the audience and those that are watching at home. We know that we're heading into an important time. November 30th is an important time for our province, an important time for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Newfoundland and Labrador is better off today. It's better off today than it was in 2003, when our province was broken. And I referred to this earlier. Our province was broken, and people were leaving, and businesses were closing. And today, that's not what's happening in our province. Today, we have a good economy. We continue to have a strong economy. Despite the impacts of the oil revenues that have impacted us so greatly, we continue to have a good province with good people, and a province of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians that are doing well. My campaign is based on hope. It's based on hope, with healthcare being so important, which I referenced earlier. It's about opportunity, it's about people, and it's about our economy. My leadership is clear. Everyone knows what I stand for. I wear our policies every single day. My policies and the policies of our government are tested always. And while is everything perfect, have we done everything perfect? No, we haven't. But we continue to put the people of the province and their best interests first. And we are here to serve the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, and I'm here to serve them. I believe that, and it's been said many times, that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And my behavior has been solid. I've spent my lifetime on the front line as a frontline public servant. I've spent my lifetime serving my community, serving my neighborhood, my friends, my neighbors, and my province. And I've done that to the best of my ability. I've been honored and privileged to be an MHA for the last 5 years. I've been honored and privileged to serve as a cabinet minister, and I've been honored to serve as premier over the last year. I'm giving it all for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, and my party will do that when we're re-elected on November 30th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. And finally, Mr. Ball, sir, 2 minutes.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to actually give opening and closing statements tonight, and to the gentleman that was in the audience that did not get a chance to ask his question to the three leaders. I'm more prepared. I'll be prepared, and I will meet you after if you want to ask me that question. In my closing comments, I want to say that Newfoundland and Labrador is at a critical juncture, and it's at no other point in our history is it important for us to get our province back on track. For us, we talk about a stronger tomorrow, and government needs, in order to do that, we need to offer stronger management and stronger leadership. A government that promotes a culture of service as opposed to a culture of regulation. A government that actually shares information instead of keeping it from Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. A government that takes time for people instead of shutting them out. A government and a leader that you can trust. A new Liberal government will deliver on all those things, as well as a 5-point plan for a stronger tomorrow. So in addition to the many policies that we've already rolled out, like the replacement of the Waterford Hospital, the opening of the Office of a Seniors Advocate, or the increase in the early learning and the childcare supplement, which adds $1 for 3 years starting in year 2 for our ECEs, healthy living assessments, leveraging Crown land so our communities can use that Crown land for economic development. An independent appointments commission, which is key to making sure we put the right people on those important, in those important positions that we have. Boards, Crown agencies like NALCOR as an example, making sure we have the best people in those places. So in 27 days from now, the people of Newfoundland and Labrador will have their opportunity to choose more of the same or to choose something different. So Mr. Davis and his Conservatives would like you to make that decision in fear. But I'd ask you, on behalf of Liberals, to make that decision in hope. So I thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to meeting you on the campaign trail.
Thank you, Mr. Ball. I guess that concludes our leaders' debate, the only actual leaders' debate on the island outside of St. John's. And I guess the last debate, safe to say, before the writ is dropped. Do you have any idea when that might be, Premier?
I do.
You do? But you're not going to say. All right, well, you don't have a whole lot of time, so it's going to be soon.
One of these fine days, right?
I would like to thank the Gander and Area Chamber of Commerce, and certainly I'm grateful for the offer to moderate. And I'd like to thank Fallon. You did a great job. Your fingers must be worn out on your little switches there. Here you go. Turn it off for one last time. Thank you very much to our panelists as well. We had Gina Brown, Kevin Higgins, and David Newell. I will pass it on now to Fallon White.
Thank you. Well, this has been an interesting, informative, and somewhat heated evening. On behalf of the Chamber, I sincerely want to thank the three of you for taking time to come out and meet with us and give everybody some information, and best of luck on the campaign trail. Our panelists, Gina, Kevin, and David, great job, and thank you for keeping us all on pace. To our moderator, Pete, thanks for so much for making the trek home to Gander to come out and be a part of it this evening. We really appreciate it. To our corporate sponsors, Gander Hyundai and Weston's at the airport, and the board of directors and staff of the Gander and Area Chamber of Commerce for their assistance this evening. And last but not least, Roger Robinson and his Rogers TV crew, I always have to read that because it's a tongue twister, for a great job with partnering with the Chamber to bring us all to a new level with this success for a province-wide political debate. Finally, I encourage everyone to get out and vote, either through special ballots, advanced polls, or on Election Day. November 30th, have a voice. And I now pass it back to Gina Brown. Gina?
Thank you, Fallon. And I'd like to thank all the leaders for coming. It takes a great deal of courage to put yourself out there, certainly in a debate situation. So congratulations on a great evening. Thank you to the Gander and Area Chamber of Commerce to allow this event to take place and the partnership that you have with Rogers TV. Always a pleasure, Pete, to spend some time with you and my fellow panelists. Thank you to the audience, to everybody who attended us here at the Smallwood Arts and Culture Centre in Gander, and certainly to our viewers at home. Thank you to the staff and management at the Smallwood Arts and Culture Centre for allowing us to have this event here. Thanks as well to Notre Dame Furniture and Special Day Boutique for the stage decor. A very special thanks to our volunteers who have been very diligent in making tonight's event possible, standing patiently and manning your spots. So thank you. We wouldn't be able to do this. This is all volunteer work. So congratulations to everybody there. A reminder to our Gander viewers, there's going to be a live political forum because we can't have enough politics. We have to have another one. This is for the provincial candidates for the Gander district. It's going to be a great evening. Once again, it's with the Gander and Area Chamber of Commerce and Rogers TV. That will be taking place on November the 17th. It begins at 7 o'clock right here. And everybody, don't forget to vote. Best of luck to the candidates that across the province, to the leaders, and as well to all the parties. Thanks so much for catching us.